Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen feels entitled to OP's backyard and gets taught a lesson. Am I the jerk for not letting my neighbors use my yard? I, 26 female, recently bought a house with my husband. Our house is a beachfront house with an amazing yard. The backyard is designed to basically look like a hidden oasis. It has a pool, a hot tub, water fountains on the side, and a small slide, all surrounded by trees and other plants. The trees give us privacy from both houses next to us, but still gives us a view of the beach. The backyard is why we bought the home, and we already spend the majority of our time being back there, even when my husband works. The entire backside of the house is mostly glass, so it's also what we see when we're in the house. It's definitely the focal point of our home. Yesterday, we started the construction on a new fence. This fence goes around the backyard with a gate only to the beach. We didn't think anything of it before I got a knock on my door this morning from someone who lives in the condos across the street from us. I've seen her a few times, but we never really talked. She introduced herself and then asked us what we were building in our yard. I just told her that we wanted to put up a fence before tourists start coming. This was recommended to us by our realtor. Marie kind of looked shocked and asked if we were putting a gate on the front. I said no, and that we already had a landscaper come and look to get more plants to put around it. She then asked me if I could put a gate in the front. I didn't really understand this, so I asked her to clarify when she explained that the previous owners would let people from the condo walk through their yard to get to the beach, because otherwise they have to walk 5 minutes down the street to get onto the beach, where there are lots of tourists. She said that mostly everyone in the condo started doing this over the past few years, especially people with kids. She also said that they would let people use their pool if they texted and asked. I immediately told her that no one would be in my yard unless I knew them. She obviously got upset by this and then said that basically everyone in the condos would be upset by this. I told her that I understand why they want to use my yard and that it's just to pass through, but I hate the idea of being in my backyard and having random people walking through. She started getting mad at me for it and saying that I'm ruining a lot of people's way of life by blocking this path. She claimed that a lot of people let their kids take this path to get to the beach. I did get annoyed, and I told her that I don't really care and that I will not let people into my yard. She tried to bring up the pool, but I just told her that I wasn't going to talk about it anymore. This was yesterday afternoon, and I've already seen people standing outside the condos and pointing to my house. I even had someone run over to talk to me and ask if I was really gating off the beach path. I've talked to both my neighbors who agree with me, but my friend and sister are both saying I'm in the wrong. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. If anything happens to these people on your property, you're liable. Who cares what happened in the past? The previous owners aren't the owners anymore. You are. Like the saying goes, your house, your rules. You also don't want people littering or destroying your yard. They have to walk 5 minutes. Oh, boo-hoo. Your friend and your sister don't own your property. What exactly did your friend and your sister say which would make you in the wrong? OP. My sister feels like this is a rich person issue and that they're not hurting anyone. My friend feels like anyone should have access to the beach and it's rude to make parents with kids walk down during the summer. Update. I do have a fence around my pool area. This is just to protect my yard. Secondly, we have indoor and outdoor cameras all around our house. Some are visible and some are hidden. We do already have a sign up that says that we are recording. The fence will also be finished by tomorrow afternoon, so it shouldn't be too long for us to have it up. I also called our local police and they said that they did not have a right to use our private property to access the beach, so everything is clear for me to move forward with. The previous owners had the house for 10 years and only let people use it for the past 3 years, so it's not long enough for any legal action to force me to give up my yard, per our lawyer. I called my realtor this morning and the owners called me after she talked to them and said a lot about the situation. They told me that they only use the house as a vacation home, and so they did let people cross during the summer, but when they were there, they put up a sign telling people to not use the path. They said that they didn't let people do it at first, but when they weren't home, people did it anyway. They also allowed certain people to use their pool only when they were in it themselves. It was never a free-for-all pool, and they even put the cover on it before leaving. The previous owners did also say that it was smart to put up a fence and recommended calling the condo manager. When I did call the condo manager, they asked if we could find a middle ground because they know that a lot of residents use my yard and kind of made it sound like they told residents that they could use this path. My neighbor thinks that they used it as a selling point because there were times where they would point towards our house specifically while people were looking at condos. Either way, my husband is having our lawyer send the condo a letter stating that no residents are allowed in our yard for any reason so that we have legal writing with them. A lot of my neighbors who live in the houses have messaged me and said that they're really happy I'm cutting off the path, so I feel like I made the right move. I've already put up no trespassing and no beach access signs and had permanent ones for the front of our yard and on the fences. I'm also putting up a privacy fence in the front and adding trees right in front of it so it's harder for people to jump it. We're also connecting our gate right to our neighbors so that there isn't a spot on the side where they can try and squeeze through. Either way, I'm going to cut off the path and I don't care if they hate me for it. Am I the jerk for telling anyone who asks why I don't bake for our haul anymore? I really like baking as a hobby. I don't believe in food waste, but I don't often want to eat all of the stuff I make. And the best way I can describe it is that I love to bake, but when it comes to eating it, I'm just like, nah. I'm not sure how to describe it. Anyways, I normally give my baked goods to friends and family. The tradition we have started when my brother said he couldn't come over to pick up a coconut cupcake pan because he's busy. I didn't plan for space in my fridge to keep the cupcakes and awkwardly left them in the apartment's common room, with permission from the security guard, of course. I left a note saying the cupcakes were free to whoever with my apartment number on it. The security guard said I had to. That started this semi-tradition of me putting whatever extra goods I have on a free table in the lobby area. Others started to do it a lot too. It's worked out well so far. I like the environment it's created. Problem came when one of the neighbors knocked on my door. She introduced herself, said she's from another apartment floor, and that she, in a visibly upset way, was very unhappy with me leaving unattended food out. One of her kids, allergic to peanuts, had some of my peanut butter brownies. I got very nervous hearing this and I apologized. She said it was fine, but wanted me to pay part of the cost of getting her kid help. I asked if we could talk it out and she agreed. I agreed to pay for the cab she took back and forth to the hospital, which I know is getting off easy for what happened. I apologized again and she said it was all fine, but to please be extra careful. Since then, I don't leave any food out at all because that situation made me nervous. I knew it wasn't the worst that could have happened, but still. My hall neighbor, let's call her Lily, asked if I was okay, noticing that it's been a while since I put anything out. I just told her that after what happened with the peanut butter allergy issue, I don't feel comfortable doing that anymore in case something like that happens again. Now, I didn't know Lily knew who I was talking about just based on the allergy issue alone. Specifically, they knew which kid I was talking about because they saw him take some. I guess Lily spread the word around because I got a knock from the lady again, and she asked why I told everyone to blame her. I explained that I did not blame or tell anyone to blame her in any way. One of our neighbors asked why the tradition died off, and I only said because of the allergy incident, but I never mentioned specifics like who it was or what they looked like, etc. She's mad and says I did that purposefully and will be speaking to the landlord to make a report. I apologized again and said I swear I did not mean for this to happen, but she stormed off. I'm not exactly sure what to do now. I don't hold anything against her or the kid, and I'm pretty mad at Lily for this. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Lady with the kids is out of line. She should be angrier at her own poor parenting. Every parent I know with a peanut allergy kid teaches those kids caution from a very young age. It's like, okay, what do we do before crossing the street? Stop, look, and listen. And what do we do when we see a plate of unattended cookies? Don't eat them because it could hurt them. Is it considerate to add a little card next to the food offerings, naming the food and potential allergens? Sure, that helps both kids and adults with allergies or food restrictions. While I normally don't like gossip, I'm kind of on Lily's side here. The mom deserves some negative press. I'd bet some of the other residents have come to the same conclusion and mom is embarrassed. Good, she should be. This isn't going to be the only plate of free brownies this kid sees in their life. I ruined my ex-boyfriend's life 20 plus years ago, and I just made sure that it stayed ruined. When I was in college back in the 90s, I met Jake, who was then 23, through mutual friends. He had already graduated and was planning to move to the opposite side of the United States for grad school, and I had already been making plans to move with friends only a 90-minute drive away from where he was moving to. We had so much in common, fell in love, and it really seemed like fate, both planning to move 3,000 miles and landing so close together. He had 2 sisters and a younger brother who were all awesome people, and I became instant friends with them as well. Because he was in school and I was working, I would usually go to him to hang out on weekends. He was renting a house with 2 roommates, also in his program. We were young, so money was tight, but we had fun, went for taco dates, and spent a lot of time at his house where he was breeding and selling small animals. Jake was an animal science PhD student, so being around animals was normal, and I loved it. I met and became friends with his advisor's wife, Mary, who was in her mid-50s, who worked in administration at the university. She's a lovely woman, and I would often have lunch with her when I went over on the weekends. Jake was a teaching assistant, and I met with other people in the program and made friends with them faster than he did. After about 2 years of dating, I was at the house one day. We were laying in bed, and he said, out of the blue, he was concerned I had been gaining weight, and it made it harder for him to be attracted to me. No concern about my health. It was all about him finding me attractive. I sat up and said, well, then maybe you should make sure there's better food for me to eat than crackers and cheese when I come up on weekends. Even at 23, I didn't take that kind of BS. I had gained maybe 10 pounds since meeting him 2 years earlier, and I still wore the same size clothes, about a US size 6 to 8. I wasn't going to engage in a fight about it at all. It was his problem, not mine. So I asked him calmly, so what's your solution to this? He stared at me blankly and said, well, I guess that you should try to lose it. And I said, nah, I'm not going to do that. So what are you going to do about it? He said, well, I guess nothing. I wanted to let you know how I feel. And I said, cool, thank you. Went to sleep and drove home the next day as usual. We keep dating, and about 3 months later he called me and said he wanted to break up after close to 3 years. The reason, and I quote, you don't know enough about science. He felt like he couldn't have a conversation with me about his work where he didn't have to use common names for animals instead of scientific ones. I said, well, that's BS. What's the real reason? He said it was the real reason. He came to see me a month later to return something of mine, and I confronted him, demanding to know the real reason. He finally admitted that he had been seeing one of his undergrad students. Let's call her Meg. She was 19. He was then 26 and the teacher. I screamed at him to leave. My roommate threatened to throw him off of our second-floor balcony if he didn't go, and he left. It hit me all at once after he walked out, and I went from rage to stunned laughter. I had met Meg a few times, and at one point she was at his house for a barbecue and spilled something all over her pants. Jake asked me if I could loan her some sweats. I couldn't, because I was a size 8 and she was a size 18. Nothing wrong with that at all. But the point is, I realized he made those comments about my weight to try and get me to break up with him because he was a coward. Although when he had said those things to me about my weight, it was 1 a.m. I lived about 95 miles away and we had just hooked up, so I didn't know how he thought this would go. Even in hindsight, it perplexes me. Did he think I was going to break up with him and storm off into the night and drive for an hour and a half? Anyway, I emailed his roommates. It was the early 2000s. It's how you communicated anything you didn't want to say on the phone. I wanted to let them know we had broken up and that they were always lovely to me and thank them for being friends. They both admitted that they knew about Meg and were the ones that demanded Jake tell me or they would. That's when he broke up with me with the lame, you don't understand science excuse. One of his roommates, a super nice, super cute guy named George, offered to help me get a few things still at their house that he had collected for me. He suggested I come up for the weekend, we go out and drink and have a good time. All the things Jake didn't want to waste money on, and I said sure. So I went up and George let me into the house while Jake was gone. I took photos of all of his animals because while I might not be a PhD student, I paid attention and I knew he had an endangered species in his care. He wasn't breeding it, it was an unreleasable animal he had taken in from a rescue organization. There was paperwork he had to submit with a $25 fee and he refused to do it, saying he didn't want the government in his business. I took photos of that animal, all his breeding conditions, and a photo of an animal not allowed in this state, which was in a tank, right next to a window and visible from outside. I then went out for a night on the town with George. We stumbled in early around midnight, so Jake and Meg, who were watching TV, would see me in my dress, drunk, and George practically carrying me. I spent the night in George's room. He was a total gentleman, but made sure to leave the room and parade past them in his boxers a few times. When I went to leave the next morning, Jake said I didn't have to act like that in front of him, as I ate a donut slowly in my rumpled dress with messy hair while George stared at me and then planted a kiss on my head. Meg looked ashamed, not quite knowing where to look, and I said, "Have fun with my leftovers," and walked out. I wanted to think the petty, loud hookup and a few juvenile insults were my revenge. It was not. The next day I had my photos developed, and I called the State Office of Fish and Wildlife. I reported the animals in the house, the potential overcrowding of breeding animals, and the 2 animals he shouldn't legally have at all in the state, and I asked them how to make a report. Turns out, Jake wasn't well liked by his peers in his program or by his roommates, but I was. George had suggested that he and their other roommate could submit complaints to the university that my ex was hooking up with one of his students and showing her favoritism. The night we were out at the bars, we made sure to tell the story to anyone who would listen. They made sure that all the women in his classes knew he was hooking up with Meg. It wasn't a large program, so people knew fast he had cheated and was now dating his student. George and the other roommate made sure people knew they had put in complaints, sick of Jake's entitled BS. With my full statement made and photos sent to the state wildlife officials, I called my friend Mary, Jake's advisor's wife. She knew about the breakup and lame reason, and I let her know that he admitted that he was hooking up with Meg. I had been emailing with him and he admitted to it in writing, so I sent that to Mary. To say she was not happy about that was an understatement. She said she made sure it would be investigated and told her husband, Jake's direct advisor, while I was on the phone with her. Speaking of investigations, a few weeks later, George called me, giddy, to say state and wildlife officials were there, confiscating animals. He told me he would be happy to tell them whatever they needed to know. Meg was there when it happened and told the officials, as far as she knew, all the animals belonged to her boyfriend Jake and that they were all legal. That put George and the other roommate in the clear. One animal was kept in the backyard, so it was implied to Jake that a neighbor reported it. While they were there to investigate, they knew to look in the back window to see the far more problematic, illegal to have in the state under nearly any circumstances animal. Since George was on the lease, he was able to let them in to investigate in the house. The animals were all in the communal areas, and the officer stayed there for a few hours and returned with a warrant to take all of the animals and enter Jake's room to investigate. George and the other roommate let them into their rooms with no issues and were quickly cleared. Meg apparently couldn't get a hold of Jake and eventually drove to the university to find him. Remember, no cell phones yet. It was a good day. The only animals they left were some guppies in a fish tank. Now, PhD students need grant money to do research, and a large part of animal studies funding comes from the federal government. Jake had just gotten an EPA grant right around when he broke up with me, so I called the EPA and asked how I would report that a person with a federal grant was being investigated for illegally harboring endangered animals. Long story short, he lost his EPA grant and had to make restitution on what he had already used, close to $30,000. He would never be able to get another federal grant. He avoided jail time on the state charges since all the animals were in good health, but lost all of his breeding animals, worth thousands of dollars, since they were collected for safekeeping during the investigation when the 2 illegal animals were taken. In the end, he owed a $15,000 fine, and 2 animals went to a nearby nature center. For years, I would stop by if I was in the area to visit them. The university revoked his scholarship and fired him from teaching for having his relationship. He somehow escaped being expelled, but it always shocked me that he never tried to hide the relationship with Meg and was so stupidly self-assured he didn't even wait the 4 weeks until she would have been done with his class to start publicly dating her. By the university rules, he would have been cleared to date her. It never fails to make me laugh. After a few months, I emailed his sisters and I told them that I missed them because Jake broke up with me after insulting my looks, cheating on me, and I felt weird contacting them. The girls told me that he told them that I broke up with him because of the distance. I forwarded them emails that Jake wrote after the breakup, talking about how he fell for Meg and he was sorry about it, but it was true. I couldn't keep up with him academically, and it made him attracted to Meg. Jake managed to convince his dad to pay for 1 more year of school so he could get a master's instead of a PhD, and while I stayed in contact with his sisters and brother via email and then social media, I largely let it all go. I got even, made some friends. Mary became like an auntie to me, and I went on with life. I went on to get a master's degree myself, and my specialty? Helping scientists and doctors communicate their work to lay people. You know, us dummies who can't remember all the scientific names. I swear it happened by accident, not design, but I love it, and I work with everyone from small-town doctors and nurses to pharmaceutical companies to museums, etc. I travel a lot, and I get to learn a lot of cool things about our planet and how things work. I knew through his siblings that Jake and Meg got married and had 2 kids. Meg dropped out of the sciences and became an accountant. Jake went back to breeding animals. Every once in a while, his sisters or brother would tell me something over lunch or via text, but we had our own relationships that exist outside of him. Apparently, when I sent a wedding gift for one of his sisters, he loudly complained at a co-ed bridal shower that all of his siblings were still my friends and didn't make an effort to embrace his now wife, Meg. Apparently, the sister just laughed and said, "I don't make it a habit to be friends with homewreckers." This is how Jake's parents found out that their relationship started and ours ended, 10 years later after we broke up. Jake never found out I was behind reporting him to the state, and in the end, I didn't lie about a single thing, except maybe exaggerating a drunken makeout session with George, who is now a successful and tenured professor with a lovely wife and daughters. Fast forward about 20 years to a few weeks ago. I was at a university giving a lecture to a room of 250 undergrad and grad students. In the end, I was mingling with a student afterwards, and I hear a voice say, "Hey OP, long time no see," and I realized it's Jake, and I didn't change the expression on my face at all. I was completely shocked, and my instinct was to play dumb. So I said, "Help me out, have we met at another workshop or a lecture?" He looked incredulous and said, "It's me, Jake," and I said, "I can't place you, but I would love to figure it out." Finally, I gasped and said, "Oh my goodness, Jake, I guess I blocked you out," and said, "Well, lovely to see you," and moved on quickly when he tried to reach out and hug me. I was happy to leave it there, with the satisfaction of him seeing me as a guest lecturer in a science department of a major university when he was just in the audience. The department chair and faculty who invited me to speak took me out to dinner, and while there, one of them said, "So, you know Jake?" I said I did from over 20 years ago, being vague about how. She went on to tell me he had been there for an interview for a teaching position and had spent a few days there observing, and they were likely going to hire him. I couldn't control it. I scoffed. When they all looked at me, I said, "I'm sorry, I'm just shocked he's teaching after what happened at the other university." When they asked what happened, I told them exactly what had happened with him and Meg, his student, and how he had to leave the program without a PhD because he couldn't afford to stay after losing a scholarship. The 3 people I was with all looked at each other like they knew they had a problem, and then said, "Wow, we'll have to look into that," and they changed the subject. My old friend Mary called me this weekend to say a friend at the university let her know someone had called during a background check about Jake, and they pulled his file, which included being fired, leaving the program with a lower degree and the complaint letters from over 20 years ago about his conduct. Mary's name had been on it with her husband listed as a faculty advisor, so she thought she'd like to know. As a bonus, it had a copy of his arrest record for the illegal animals. I guess his dad had paid a decent lawyer to get the record expunged after the charges were reduced, and he paid the fines so it doesn't show up on a standard background check. I don't think he's going to get that job. So I will return to my life, content that the universe comes through sometimes, especially if you give it a little nudge now and then. The best revenge is when you don't have to do anything wrong, you just have to help direct knowledge to the right places. If there's anything I can impart to anyone reading this, it's that if someone who is supposed to love you complains about your weight or looks, that is their problem to fix mentally, not yours. And maybe it's time to check out what they're doing behind your back or simply move on. Remember though, it's their flaw, not yours. If Jake hadn't been a coward and tried to make me break up with him and just ended things with me in a mature way, I might not have found out about Meg and turned his own wickedness back on himself. You're not going to get the praise you feel you're deserving of. Sorry, this was 20 years ago. You're clearly unhinged, and I advise you get some therapy. I never thought I would side with a cheating guy, but it's been 20 years, and the guy's living rent-free in her head. At this point, he seems to have 2 kids. I can't help but think that it's them she's affecting by damaging their father's work life. This reminds me, a girl shot me down in a bar back in 2007. I need to find out where she lives and kick over her garbage cans. That'll show her for having a boyfriend at the time. Definitely messed up his life, but nothing says not over him quite like staying friends with his family. Jake for sure dodged a huge bullet there. I hope he can have a good life. He has no chance with OP checking in with family and popping up to ruin things for him every few years. Am I the jerk for telling my parents that being better parents to their younger kids does not make up anything to me? My parents had me when they were still pretty young. They were both 21. They weren't really secure and didn't have a maternal or paternal instinct back then. Because of this, my dad's parents stepped up and they both would take care of me when my parents were busy with school or work or anything really. I was basically raised by my grandparents for 13 years, and when I was 13, it only stopped because my life got busier at the encouragement of my grandparents. I was in extracurriculars, paid for by my grandparents, and spending more time with friends and exploring the world. My grandparents taught me a lot of skills from cooking to cleaning to how to take care of myself. They did it because they were aware I might not be taken care of if something happened to them, and I was left with just my parents. For years, my parents resented me. I know it, they know it, and my grandparents know it. They showed it in smaller ways, complaining when I asked for their signature or when my grandparents told them they needed to show up at parent conferences at my school. They would grumble about me being sick and ask my grandparents to deal with it. Sometimes they would take me to an amusement park and get annoyed when they couldn't go on all the rides together because that meant leaving me alone. Sometimes my grandparents had plans and couldn't let me stay with them for a night, and my parents wanted to go out. Then they had more kids, who are 3 and 1 now, and they are way better parents to them. I'm not saying they're perfect because nobody is, but they are being parents to them. They deal with every tantrum without acting like they hate them, and they play with them, read bedtime stories, sing with them, fight over who stays home with the sick kid because both want to be there. They know their 3-year-old's favorite foods and music. They want these kids. It only came to my attention recently because my parents suddenly decided the 3 of us needed therapy, that they felt them being better parents to their younger kids meant I would forgive them and it would make it up to me for not being there for me, even though they still aren't. They talked about me being distant and not spending time with the family and how they don't know me. I told them of course they don't know me. They were never around me, and when they were, they wished I wasn't there. I told them they can't honestly expect that being better parents to their other kids would make it up to me. They mentioned something about siblings and how I speak like they're not. And I said, because my parents are dad's parents, not them, and the kids I live with have different parents to me and a very different life. I also reiterated that being better to them is good because no kid should go through what I did, but it doesn't make anything up to me. They told me it was spiteful to not take joy in my siblings having better, and they accused me of being stubborn and unforgiving. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. They didn't want you as their kid, and they pawned you off onto your grandparents, who thankfully stepped up to the plate. They told you it was spiteful to not take joy in your siblings having better? How is it spiteful to not take joy in watching your younger siblings actually have their parents engage with them instead of throwing them away? OP. My theory is that my parents assumed I would automatically have this really deep love for my siblings and would see them as that, siblings, and that it would bridge the gap between us without them making any effort toward me. I think they set up this idea, and when I didn't feel that way, they were like, OMG, how did this happen? He should be happy. Karen loses it over my dog's treats not being vegan. I needed to go get my dog's food at the pet store this morning. I brought my dog because she's been going to training since my state opened up, and it was a great opportunity to bring her there and get some distraction exposure. While I was there was a young lady, maybe early 20s, who was walking around and she saw my dog. I said hi when she looked down at my dog and asked if she could pet her. I said of course, Hallie is very friendly and she's great for socializing. She kneels down and starts petting her and telling her she is a good girl. I had a treat pouch and I asked if she would like to give Hallie a treat. She said she would love to. So I gave her a few, and she asked if Hallie knew any tricks. She did down, sit, and paw, and took the treats gently. After a minute or so, the lady looked at her hand and asked what kind of treats they were, and I told her that they were beef liver. She backed up away from us, and if I could see her entire face, I'm sure her jaw would have dropped. She said something like, "Why didn't you tell me what they were?" Very upset. I was shocked. I didn't think it mattered, so I said, "I'm so sorry. Are you allergic?" I thought maybe that was the issue. She said, "No, I'm vegan." She went on to say that I should have told her what they were before I offered them and that I was a disgusting person for not saying anything or thinking about another person. I was honestly too flabbergasted to even say anything else. She just walked away, holding her hand out away from her, to, I'm assuming, the bathroom to wash her hand. I kind of feel like the jerk because I didn't say anything about the type of treat. But also, she's a dog, and most dogs are meat-based. I don't eat meat, but I understand that my dog needs to, so I regularly handle meat for her. It doesn't bother me much now. And at the same time, I also feel like if you don't want to handle animal products, Maybe ask what kind of treats they are before you take them. But I still can't shake the feeling that I'm in the wrong because I didn't say anything, and I understand how she felt about handling the treats. Am I the jerk? Should I have said what type of treats they were before handing them to her? Well, what do you think? Should OP have told them what kind of treats they were before handing her any? Please let us know. Entitled Dad picks up shark and ruins the day for everyone. Hi, I work at an aquarium as an educator and see a lot of things. On this particular day, it wasn't too busy, but we're still dealing with everything going on, so a lot of things are closed at my aquarium. We're working on opening everything, but it's hard. I was working the shark touch station. Now these particular sharks are nocturnal in the wild and tend to take naps during the day. Side note, if you don't know, not all sharks have to swim to breathe. These sharks don't have to, so they're typically laying at the bottom of the tank for their naps. I like to explain that when people come up and see they're not moving. On this particular day, we were kind of busy, and the sharks were having their afternoon nap. A family came up and noted the sharks weren't moving. Me. Yeah, so they're asleep and that's totally normal. But if you have long enough arms, you can try to touch them. But keep in mind, the water is cold and they're at the bottom of the tank. The dad nods and reaches in the tank, poking the shark hard enough to wake it up and thus making it move to the other side of the tank. He looks at me, irritated. Entitled Dad. Now what? Me. Well, you can wait for them to wake up and come to you, or you can move to this section. It's a bit deeper, but there are a lot of sharks there to touch. He rolled his eyes and moved his family. At the news station, it was too deep for the kids to reach, and they were starting to throw a fit. When this happens, I like to offer them other things they can do, or other animals up ahead, and always say that they can come back to see if the sharks had moved. This guy was not having it. He started throwing a fit, saying it was unfair that the sharks were asleep while people were there wanting to touch them. I explain the normal stuff I say when people get upset, which only upsets him more. He then proceeded to reach down, grab a shark by the tail, and lift it out of the water. I was bewildered. I see people push the sharks and try to move them on a normal basis, but no one removes them from the water until today. I didn't know how to react. They don't train you for this. Nee. Sir, please put the shark down. They need to live in the water. Entitled Dad. My kids will touch this shark. I panic. Sharks and other animals can die from stress, and this shark was not having a great time. I quickly call my lead, and as he's rounding the corner, the man drops the shark, causing the other sharks to wake up and become agitated. The Entitled Dad takes off to the next exhibit with my lead not far behind. I call the animal care team and essentially close down the touch section until I get the okay to open it. It didn't open for the rest of the day, which caused a lot of angry parents the rest of the day, but that's for another day. I think my lead caught the Entitled Dad and kicked him out, but not without him demanding a refund for the lack of things open and the lack of fun they had. I don't know if he got it. He probably did. We're known for handing out refunds for the dumbest things. I was too busy focusing on the animals. The sharks ended up being fine, and we were able to open the station the next day. So, my note to everyone, please do not pick up the sharks at your local aquarium. Thanks. Update. I got in contact with the lead for that day and asked him what the consequences were. He said we hold a 2-strike policy and gave him a warning. He came in the next day, got into an argument about the mask policy with the executive manager at the aquarium, spit on the floor, and was then escorted out by police, more than likely charged and put on the ban list. And we did not give him a refund that day. Have you ever got to pet sharks? And if so, did you like it? Please let us know. I like the ones that feel sandpapery and the stingrays, yes. Karen expects me to babysit for free as the cool aunt. My sister and I have always been very different. Growing up, she was your stereotypical nerdy/geeky girl, very into sci-fi and fantasy, video games, etc. She bonded a lot with my parents over it because they are the same. I always felt kind of different from the others because I'm not very geeky. And while I did my best to fit in, Star Wars movies, Harry Potter, etc., I took my first opportunity to leave the area for school. I went to FIT and got a degree in fashion design. I always loved making my own clothes. To frame it one way, I made my prom dress from my own pattern, and my family smiled politely. My sister threw together a Harry Potter costume, and the picture is hanging on the walls. Well, sis had kids a while back. I sent polite gifts, including a quilt to be handed down. Sis received them warmly, but I found out she doesn't use the quilt because the room is Harry Potter themed. Due to what's going on right now, I ended up moving back closer to home into a condo I had been renting out. Tenants were not evicted or anything. Once sister found out, she got really excited and started making all kinds of plans. I was thrilled because I thought she wanted to spend more time with me. Except the plans were like, I take the kids to the zoo, I take them to the park, I take them for ice cream, the aquarium, etc. so sis can have some time to herself and relax, play video games, etc. I inquired about when she and I would spend time together, and she actually said, "It's not like we have anything in common we can do together." I was really hurt by this and declined her requests for me to basically babysit her kids. She asked me why, and didn't I want to be the cool aunt? And this is where I think I'm the jerk. I said, "I don't know. It's not like I have anything in common with them that we can do together. Sounds like you want an unpaid babysitter." She was shocked and went stomping to mom and dad, who immediately took her side and told her that I should be thankful to spend time with the kids. I said, "Why? It's not like anyone in the family has ever made it a point to spend time with me doing something I'd enjoy." She told me that if I'd tried harder to be more like the rest of them instead of chasing popularity and doing my nails, maybe I would have more in common with them. I'm lost now because on one hand, I don't think I was wrong to decline being a free sitter for my sister. But maybe my mom is right and I've been a crappy member of the family because I couldn't just get into Star Wars and all that. Edit. I just wanted to chime in and say that Star Wars and Harry Potter aren't the only geeky/nerdy things they like. They were just the ones that popped into my head. I remember back when we were in high school, my sister laughed in my face because I didn't enjoy the Sabriel books, and she told me that they were too advanced for me to understand. She found me reading the California Diaries, offshoot of Babysitter's Club books, and laughed in my face again because she thought they were dumb. Edit 2. One thing I'm curious about is why are so many people telling me, first thing in their comments, that they're geeky and nerdy? Why do you think that makes things different? Well, what do you think? If you had siblings that never wanted to spend time with you, would you watch their kids for free? Please let us know. My kids are such angels. You should be the one paying me to watch them. I'm not allowed to buy here. I work in a private preschool. I wear a green badge on a lanyard, and for the time being, I usually wear scrubs to work that I can throw off when I get home. Anyway, today I had to swing by Small Fart on my way home to pick up some groceries, but mostly to visit the pharmacy and get my mother-in-law some insulin. It's summer and hot. Today I had chosen not to wear a shirt under my scrubs because of the heat, so I wasn't able to change like usual. Still, my crayon and rainbow patterned top and bright turquoise pants looked nothing like Small Fart's blue vest and khaki pants uniform, and I'm headed straight home after, so I thought no big deal. I hit the pharmacy first because they close earlier than the rest of the store and there's always a line. I'm up after an elderly gent and I'm just kind of people watching, going over my list in my mind. Suddenly, I feel a tug on my shirt. This is uncomfortable for two reasons. One, social distancing is still a thing, right? And two, did I mention it was hot? I'm sweaty as heck. I turn and see this octogenarian Karen poking her meaty finger at me. At least she had a mask on. "You're in line?" I look down at the floor where there is an actual line painted. Yes. She clicks somehow, like an insect. "That's great. You know you employees should let us paying customers go first. We have more important places to be." Me. "I don't work here, ma'am." Karen. "Don't you ma'am me? Stupid teenager." I'm pushing 40. I'm not in that much of a hurry, so I try to get her with kindness. Me. "I'm sorry, I really don't work here, but if you're in a hurry, you can go ahead of me." Karen. "You bet I can." She practically pushes me out of the way, and I scoot back to the next dot that's 6 feet away. The lady behind her, who is now behind me, gives me a "what can you do?" shrug. So I wait and she goes up to the pharmacist and immediately starts bad-mouthing me to the lady, who obviously doesn't give a hoot. She just glances up at me and apologizes to the lady for the wait. The Karen gets her stuff and starts to leave, but suddenly stops. I'm ready for another tirade, but it's my turn, so I kind of step around her. As I do, she starts walking again and leaves. I do what I came to do. The pharmacist doesn't even mention the incident, so neither do I, and then get my food and also leave. I don't know if she was pausing to maybe apologize to me, or if she had more to say, or just wanted another look and realized she had been wrong. I guess dealing with toddlers all day has made me Karen-proof. She was pretty mild though. Am I the jerk for inviting my brother to my wedding, but not his wife? I'm engaged. My fiancée is overweight. She was when I met her. I've always found her irresistibly attractive. Not looking for commentary or unsolicited advice on this point. My fiance and I sent out save the dates for the wedding. My brother got one. His wife very intentionally did not. He got married last year. His wife had all my siblings' significant others as bridesmaids, whether they were married or dating. Even my other brother's girlfriend, who he had only been with for a few months. I had been with my girlfriend for nearly 5 years at that point, and everyone knew it was a question of when, not if, we'd get married. She didn't ask my girlfriend to be a bridesmaid because she didn't want to be constrained to picking a bridesmaid's dress available in plus sizes and did not want to have my girlfriend in her wedding photos. I'm not speculating. That's not something I ever could have guessed. That's what she said, in her own words, when we arrived at the wedding to find everyone else's significant others were bridesmaids but her, and asked what was going on. I thought maybe it was a bridezilla moment, and she had realized how awful it was later. But it's been over a year, and while my brother has apologized again and again for ever having allowed that to happen, why he's invited, his wife never did at all, even when it's brought up in front of her. We've only seen them a couple times since the wedding, and my fiance has tried to forgive and forget, but it's still uneasy between us because of the singular lens we now know she sees my fiance through. My fiance doesn't mind grinning and bearing for the occasional family event we have to attend, but I didn't feel like it would be right to make her spend her wedding day with someone who would ever treat her as less than human. We're having a very small wedding, 20 people and 12 are family. Having that woman there would taint the whole dynamic. That being said, the rest of the family is understandably upset. My family, my brother especially, feel like we're trying to make them choose sides. In my other brother's words, even if that wasn't your intention, it's the result. And that's a real jerk move none of us deserve. We didn't do anything to your fiance. I definitely don't want to make anyone choose sides, and he's not wrong that they didn't cause the problem and don't deserve the fallout. But my wife also deserves a wedding day with only people who love and cherish her. Am I the jerk for not inviting my brother's wife? Well, what do you think? Should they invite his brother's wife to their wedding or not? Please let us know. Sounds like his brother married a real Karen. Tell him he's in for a wild ride. Yeah. Don't do extra? Okay. Stop working here? Sounds good. This was about 3 years ago. I was working in the bakery of a local high-end grocer. Think gourmet Whole Foods, and had been there for 3 years. What started as a college job for a semester turned out to be a longer-term thing. I loved the work, the customers, and my coworkers. That is until the final month there. I was online for a promotion to assistant manager. In my time there, I had been passed over for different promotions for people that were more favorable for the company image. When the position came up, I was the only person across the company that applied. I thought I was a shoo-in and had been led to believe that it was as good as mine. The old assistant manager was transferring to a higher position and took extra time to train me before leaving. Weeks passed and I heard no news. No one in my department was getting an answer for when I'd be given the step up. That was until someone elsewhere asked us when the new assistant manager was transferring in from another store. Turned out that my boss's boss, we'll call him Greg, decided that I was a terrible fit and went above her to push someone into the role, someone that didn't want it and hadn't been trained for it. I complained to someone higher up, saying I should have at least been told that the decision was reversed. No word came and the new assistant manager started. It only took a couple days to realize that she had barely worked in the bakery and had not been trained for her position. She also seemed to target me, assuming that I didn't know how to do the most basic things we did. I later found out that Greg told her I was a problem employee and needed to be watched very closely and given guidance. Out of the blue, our manager was given the boot and replaced. She had no warning, and suddenly someone from a completely different store and department was in her position. This person had no clue how to do the job, and with the training that the old assistant manager gave me, I overtook most of the day-to-day tasks. Greg came in one day and threw a fit that I was doing inventory. He said that I had no place acting like I was in charge and doing jobs that weren't meant for people like me. Fine. Inventory? Not getting done. Dating and tossing old product? Not my problem now. Helping customers with issues and complaints? Let me grab the manager instead. Making sure things are filed and ordered when needed? No thanks. I started doing the bare minimum, took all of my breaks, clocked in exactly when my shift was scheduled, and left exactly when it ended, no matter what I was doing. They didn't want me to go outside my station, then I wouldn't. Easy days for me. Suddenly, issues popped up left and right, and our new manager was scrambling to figure things out. I told them nothing since it wasn't my place to teach them how to do their jobs. This all came to an end when I was called into a meeting with a store manager. We'll call him Rob. Greg has told me that you've had a lot of issues lately. Me. I bet he has. I'm just doing my job now. He told me to. Rob. Well, he told your manager to stop scheduling you after today. He wanted me to tell you. Me. Are you firing me? Rob. No. Greg said that you won't be scheduled, but you may be used as an emergency call-in during the holidays. Me. I'm not working, but I'm not fired? This is BS. Rob. I agree, but he's above me when it comes to what happens in your department. Me. All right, I'll finish today, but after that, I'm done. This is some stupid work politics, and I'm not playing this game with him. I kept my word and finished my shift without complaint. As soon as the end hit, I walked away and clocked out. That's when I told my coworkers what had happened during that meeting. I bid them farewell and walked out. The next morning, I was woken up before sunrise by a call from Greg. He said that almost everyone in our department had quit overnight and he needed me in to open. I reminded him that he didn't want me there, so I quit. He demanded I return and help him train a new team, so I did what anyone would do. I told him to do it himself, go forget himself, and hung up. Last I heard from a few friends that are still with the company, our department didn't really recover all the way, and people still talk about how we all left together one day. If you see this and recognize the story, forget you, Greg. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my husband's best friend move in with us and threatening to leave if he does? My husband has a childhood friend who we'll call Eric. Their parents are friends, so they've grown up together and consider each other brothers since they're both the only sons in their respective families. I've never been overly fond of Eric, but I've never actually disliked him until now. It turns out Eric has been cheating on his wife, Amy, the mother of his 2 small kids, with a coworker. Amy kicked him out, and now he needs a place to stay because he doesn't want anyone in his family to find out what he did, and none of his other friends have room for him. When my husband asked if he could let him stay, I flat out refused. I'm currently 7 months pregnant, and throughout my pregnancy, Amy has been a massive support. There is no way I'm going to let the man who broke her heart stay with me so he can keep his dirty little secret. My husband is upset because he claims me and Amy were never that good of friends to begin with, which is true until my pregnancy, and that he can't refuse his brother when what he did wasn't even that bad. After a lot of arguing, he says he's going to move him in tomorrow whether I agree or not because this is his house. I'm ashamed to admit I lost it. I told him if he even dares to bring him, I'll move out the same day, and that it says a lot about him that he's willing to side with a cheater. My husband is now angry at me because I'm threatening to take his baby and hasn't spoken to me since. I believe he's still planning to let Eric stay. Before this, we never really fought, and the silent treatment is starting to make me feel like a real jerk. Some of my friends say I'm the jerk because I shouldn't get involved in Eric and Amy's marital problems, but others agree it would be crappy to help him after what he's done. I honestly don't know if I overstepped. I don't want to move out. It was something I said in the heat of the moment, but I feel like I'll have to if Eric moves in now. Am I the jerk for threatening to leave the house if he moves in? And if he does move in, do I follow through? Update. So I've spoken to Amy again, and she pretty much confirmed that my husband was covering for Eric. This also isn't his first affair, and the reason he doesn't want anyone to know is because his family is essentially threatened to disown him if he did it again. Amy has tried to contact the mistress' husband, but hasn't been able to find much info about her or her husband. She's planning to tell her in-laws, but hasn't yet because they convinced her the last time to give him a second chance, and she doesn't want anyone influencing her decision again. My husband continued to ice me out until I started experiencing some cramps, and now he's acting like a doting husband again. Neither of us has brought up Eric/the argument again, but I'm still pretty upset with him. I'll update again if anything else happens. Update 2. Well, my mother-in-law came over to drop off some baby stuff. She's been doing this regularly. She noticed something was off between me and husband and asked us if something had happened. Husband fed her some BS story about how I was just worried about the birth and being parents. I think my mother-in-law could tell I was getting upset again because she told husband to go into the other room so we could talk. I ended up telling her everything, and she was furious with husband. She spent a long time lecturing him about how this isn't how you treat your pregnant spouse and how he needs to stop always trying to solve Eric's problems for him, especially not at the expense of his own marriage. She then asked me to stay the night around her place, so that's where I am right now. My husband was pretty angry I involved his mother in our problems, but has also been calling and texting me apologies since. I haven't responded yet. Well, what do you think? Do you think her husband should have Eric come stay with them or no? Please let us know. I say she kick him out, and him and Eric can go get a motel together. Maybe Motel 6. They leave the lights on for you. Dad flips out on me like a total Karen. I've been living on my own for almost 9 months and have been enjoying the freedom away from my parents, but I still like to come and stay if my parents ask. With lockdown restrictions being eased in the UK, my dad asked me if I wanted to stay at his for a few days as he needed help with some DIY and decorating. I naturally said yes, and I came down at the start of the week. The minute I got there, it was straight down to business painting the living room. I didn't mind it, but with it being the summer, we had the windows and back door open all the time. I have pretty awful hay fever, and it makes my nose run incessantly, so I began to sniff quite a lot, even if I blew my nose. My dad went ballistic and demanded that I stop sniffing every second, as he found it irritating. I apologized, but attempted to explain that I couldn't stop sniffing, and the direct way to combat it would be to shut the windows and use the AC for a bit. My father, being the cheapskate he is, refused to put the AC on and instead demanded that I stop sniffing because I was allegedly doing it to annoy him. I dismissed the idea, and he then sulked for the rest of the day. By the 5th day of my sniffly stay, he produced a mason jar with the label "sniff jar" and stated that I had to put money in every time I sniffed, with increasing amounts every time. 1 sniff equals 1 pound, 2 sniffs is 2 pounds, and so on. I refused point blank to agree, and he erupted in anger, claiming that it had been a household rule that since I was a kid. It hadn't, and my parents divorced in my teens, with no mention of this rule in either house, and that I was being disrespectful to him. I tried to discuss it with him reasonably, but he refused to listen and just resorted to talking louder than me. I was sick of the entire argument, so I gave him a piece of my mind, packed up my stuff, and went back to my place. I haven't spoken to him since, and feel like I acted as best I could in response to something that just seemed very outlandish. Edit. I've been made aware that I have used AC incorrectly. I use the term to generally refer to any form of air cooling and conditioning, when in fact it's for a specific kind. In this context, I'm referring to a number of tower fans that my dad keeps around the house but refuses to use. Am I the jerk for not wanting to be a stepmom? A lot of people are upset with me about this. So my, for clarification, at the time boyfriend, but now an ex-boyfriend, said that an old fling called him and said she's pregnant and the baby is his. Yeah, I freaked out. About a lot of stuff. He was like, "Why can't you be excited? You love me. We'll make it work." I was honestly like, "No, sorry, I can't do that. I don't want to sign up for a future of being a stepmom, and I'm just not into this. I'm sorry." People have since told me that I was being immature. If you love someone, you love all of them, and you don't leave them if you find out that they're having a baby. You should be happy for them, blah blah blah. Okay, but I don't want to be a stepmom. I'm just not dating someone with kids. I don't like kids and I don't want any in the future. And that should be okay, right? I'm also young and I don't want to live that life. I've had multiple people, including his parents, his cousins, etc., all of who I know really well, call me a selfish brat for not being cool with it. I don't get it. His cousin sent me this. "Honestly, you had the wrong reaction. You shouldn't have said you weren't happy about it and left. If you really love your partner, you would love their kid, no matter the circumstances. Also, how rude of you to say that you didn't sign up to be a stepmom. That's crazy to me that you would even say that. So you don't accept his kid just because it would have been with another woman? Babies are innocent no matter what. Grow up." What do you guys think? Who is right here? Some relevant information I didn't add before because I wrote this in a rush. We only dated for 8 months, but had been close friends for 4 years before. So no, he didn't cheat on me. No worries there. The girl was clearly very, very far along when she finally got the guts to tell him. Also, we are broken up. It wasn't even a choice. I don't want kids, so it had to be done. Thanks for all the replies. I thought I was the crazy one since a lot of people were telling me I should have stayed. What would you have done in this situation? Would you have stayed with him or left? Please let us know. Karen complains about prices and ruins a great deal for herself. This story took place over the course of a few weeks. Bear with me as I recall the details. I work at a thrift shop. Most items are priced based on quality and condition. However, we do have set prices for some items. One such item is Monster High dolls. We get them pretty often, so the general rule is that each doll goes out for $5. If it's in bad shape or missing bits, it's $4. And if it's clothed with accessories, it's $6. It's always been this way, and this is a standard across all of our locations. I've had customers ask why these dolls are more expensive than our Barbies or other dolls out there, and I usually explain that Monster High dolls offer articulated joints, and are popular for customizing and sculpting off of. When we get into a conversation about it, usually the customer will understand why the dolls are on the pricier side. Well, not this lady. This lady brought up about 10 dolls to the register and immediately asked my cashier for a manager, myself. She asks why the dolls are expensive. I explain why and assume she'll understand. But no. She instead insists that the other stores sell these dolls for $3, and she even found one in the package with all these extra accessories for only $8. I told her that unfortunately, without some proof, I wouldn't be able to honor such a reduced price, but did offer her $5 for a couple of her $6 picks due to minor imperfections. That was 2 or so weeks ago, and I assumed that that was the end of it. But I was wrong. This lady came back about a week ago and told me she was so glad she could catch me again because she has something to show me. I got a little excited because I thought she was going to show me her collection, or a doll she had customized. She brought all my expectations down when I saw she was showing me pictures of Monster High dolls from other locations. Sure enough, priced at $3 across the board. I was so surprised, I just stared. She put on a smug face and told me, "See? Your dolls are maybe just a little overpriced." And with how snotty her voice was, it took everything in me to be civil when I told her that I would speak to the store manager to clarify whether our prices were right or the other location's prices. She walked away thinking she had won, and I walked away kind of defeated. The next day when I saw the store manager was in, I asked him if we had a set price for Monster High dolls. He told me yes, and together we reviewed the pricing standard for dolls. We even went out onto the sales floor to make sure we really were on track with our pricing. Seeing as we have never had to recycle a single Monster High doll for not selling, we decided we did not need to lower the prices. Now, just today, the store manager approached me when I started my shift, grinning ear to ear. He had a story to tell me. Apparently, this lady had gone to the other locations within our city and complained and moaned about our horribly overpriced dolls to the cashier, who brought the manager over to share the conversation. She told them they should talk to that other store and see about lowering our prices a notch. And so the manager did what any good manager ought to do. She followed up and reviewed the pricing standard for these toys and dolls. To her horror, she saw that their store was in the wrong. They were practically giving these dolls away, and the pricing standard wasn't even posted at the tables, so the pricers had no idea they were pricing things incorrectly. She emailed our store manager immediately with her findings and asked us for our thoughts. My store manager told her that he and his team had encountered the lady as well and recommended reviewing the standards with her team so that they could price correctly. Then he CC'd the email to the district manager, who later in the night rolled out an email about following pricing standards more thoroughly across all departments to prevent customers like her from trying to undermine us like that again. So basically, this lady completely destroyed a really good deal for herself by raising a stink about the overpriced dolls at the other store. She's gonna be in for a nasty surprise when she next visits and finds all the dolls are appropriately priced. I don't go to Costco with my mom because she's a Karen. I'm 22 and I live with my parents right now. My mother is horribly entitled and narcissistic and absolutely loves Costco. Back in early June, I made the mistake of going to Costco with her. When we were there, I was horrified by her behavior, constantly nitpicking every little thing to any nearby staff, complaining that they don't have free samples, etc. The worst, however, was when we had already paid and were in line to get our bags checked to leave. The line was a total of 2 minutes, but that was too much. 10 seconds into being there, she literally started screaming at an employee at the membership desk from her place in line, mind you, across the way, about how that guy works in customer service and therefore needs to fix it. She even demanded his and another nearby employee's names, threatening to call corporate and threatening to make the initial guy pay for her entire purchase because her frozens were melting. I was so horrified, ashamed, and embarrassed that I actually apologized for her right then and there and did my best to just get through the line. In the car, I mentioned to her that her behavior was way out of line. She literally couldn't process that she was in the wrong, so I quietly vowed never to go to Costco with her again. It's been 2 months now, and she started to figure out, after constantly asking me to go with her and me downright refusing under any circumstance. She's now asking me why I won't go with her, and I can't hide it anymore because I go with my dad. Would I be the jerk if I tell her that her terminal case of Karen is the reason I won't go to Costco with her anymore? Note, I will not phrase it as your terminal case of Karen. I'll choose better words. Extra important info. My father has asked me to try and keep quiet about this issue around her to reduce stress in the house. Every day there is an issue, and every day we are expected to quietly deal with it because of the resulting confrontation. So I've been keeping quiet to keep the peace. Speaking of Costco, do you like going to Costco or not? Please let us know. Those free samples though, yes. Entitled Dad tries to get me to give my bike to his kid. Background. So I work at a bike camp. Right now we have to stay social distanced, wear masks, and sanitize everything, etc., etc. Of course, because I work as an instructor, I need to have my bike, which I bought myself with saved birthday money almost 6 years ago, and it's working great still. I take good care of my stuff, so I can actually show the kids what to do, ride with them, and etc. For clarification, I got a popular bike brand, and my bike's a mountain bike, so I have gears, shock absorber things, etc. Meant for a 6-foot minimum tall person. I'm a tall 20-plus female. And recently, I purchased a bike rack that goes over my rear tires and 2 large weatherproof saddlebags to carry my lunch, a raincoat, sunscreen, and anything else. I invested a lot into my bike, including getting front and rear lights for when it's dark out, and a bell of course, as I really enjoy the freedom of riding, and being an avid Pokemon Go player when I'm not working gives me a small advantage of getting to places faster and using less energy. Also, no driver's license, which I'm totally fine with as I don't mind public transit and I don't want the hassle of a car yet. Basically, my bike is my only free means of wheeled transportation, the only way I can stay employed, and I just really love it. Then this happened. Friday, last day of camp, so report cards are being handed out, kids graded, and all of that. Basically, the kids are put in different levels based on their level of skill. Level 1, we work on getting training wheels off. Level 2, kids learn to ride and control. Level 3 kids experience riding on trails and grass instead of just pavement. Level 4s get prepped for road riding. Level 5s can actually do road riding, and etc. to where they can learn to ride on rough terrain. The parents pay for a week of full-day classes, and at the end, I, the instructor, get to decide if a kid is capable of moving up a level or if they need to stay in the same one, again, based off of skill and improvement, or lack of it. We have always had very small class sizes, but huge camp area. But we're all on bikes, so we need the space. So I had 3 kids, all little angels, 2 in level 4 and 1 in level 3. One of the level 4s was the older brother of the level 3, and I was able to bump them both up a level. The other level 4, however, struggled with terrain riding and was unable to do hand signals. To clarify, hand signals are when you raise a hand off of the handlebars while riding and signal to the car on the road behind you whether you're stopping or turning, or which way you're going. Since, bikes don't have brake lights or turn signal lights. Basically, this kid was not ready for level 5 and I had to hold her back. She understood as I talked with her and really tried to help her improve. I would inform her mom at the end of day/pickup about what was going on and strongly encouraged her to help her daughter practice at home. Like homework, but on your bike. I found that helps immensely with kids learning to ride, and her mother totally understood when I told her the Thursday before that I may be holding her kid back. However, that Friday, her dad was picking her up. I thought nothing of it, of course, as her mom had informed me that morning at drop-off of the switch. So end of day rolls around, and I, of course, have not seen significant improvement despite the girl's best efforts, and unfortunately have to hold her back in level 4. I talked to the dad last, having sent home the other 2 kids, after getting the confirmation number to prove that he's allowed to pick her up, and the conversation goes something like this. Me. So, unfortunately, your daughter is unable to be moved up to level 5. She's really struggling with riding on different terrains, and her inability to ride with one hand prevents her from doing hand signals. Without hand signals, she can't road ride, and it wouldn't be fair to move her up only to have her miss out on a lot of level 5 stuff. Note, I've had to hold kids back from level 5 before. Even if they have the skills, if they're too out of control and or can't do the hand signals, it's very unsafe for them to road ride. And since level 5 is all about road riding, to bump them up when their next instructor will just have to bench them isn't fair. The entitled dad, however, didn't see my logic. Entitled dad. But why not? You're her instructor, so you should have taught her such. Me. having had similar grief in the past. Sir, each kid learns at their own rate. I didn't even start road riding until a few years ago. True story, and it can be very scary. But this is completely normal to be held back, as all it means is that she just needs some more practice. I then pulled out her report card and showed that I had written in the comments in the back. Me. See, she just needs to keep practicing, and hopefully after going through level 4 again, she can. Entitled Dad cuts me off then. It's not a big deal. Just bump her up and we'll practice before bringing her back. Me. Sorry, sir, but it's policy that unless myself or another instructor sees improvement, then it's not possible to bump her up. And even if I did, she wouldn't be road safe and would have to stay on site and miss out on the road riding completely. The dad wasn't having this. How dare you hold my daughter back a level? She can improve in a day. You're just a terrible teacher. And at that point, his daughter, who was riding around in free time, turned her handlebars too sharply and fell over. Another reason I'm holding her back. I literally spring into action, and in 5 strides I'm at her side, mask on, and helping get the bike off her legs. It's a cute one with frozen pictures on it. And given that she just scraped up her knee, I scooped her into my arms and carry her to the main tent where the first aid stuff is. All the instructors are first aid certified just for these types of incidents. As I start treating her, I ask another instructor if they can move her bike to the side just so the other kids riding around don't crash into it. As they do so, it's policy for safety and all that, and we're pretty sanitized, and I'm treating the girl's wounded knee, I can hear her dad complaining to my manager. Great. It then hit me that this guy is entitled. Entitled Dad. I want to know why this instructor won't move my perfectly capable daughter up to level 5. My manager, who knows about why I'm holding her back. I'm not responsible for what the instructors write on their report cards, and I trust OP when she decides whether or not to move a kid up a level. Entitled Dad is starting to get upset and storms back to our area, and I finish bandaging her up. I give her a camo style one because I've nicknamed her a little trooper, because whenever she falls down, she'll try to get up again, and she's fallen a lot. We return to the dad only to find him complaining to another parent. Me, having enough of the dad, walk up to him, daughter in tow. Sir, I'm giving you a courtesy keeping your kid in level 4. She's actually been needing level 3 or even level 2 teaching because she's really struggling with writing. Her dad loses it. What? You want to bump my daughter down in levels? Me, having had it. I will if you don't just accept the fact that your daughter isn't capable of safe road riding yet. Because unless you want her to get hit with a car, how dare you try and threaten me? I can get me fired? Good luck with that. And you know what? I grab the report card and a pen. I'm moving her down to level 3 just because she's not even ready for level 4. The entitled dad is literally fuming, but I don't care. I'm trying to look out for the kid. And during all that, I had realized that I was being a little soft keeping her in level 4. I've bumped kids down before, so it's not that big of a deal. Though to him, having a 10-year-old kid struggling to ride a bike was probably embarrassing, but she needed to learn at the appropriate level first. Hey, I had a friend who didn't get her training wheels off until she was 12, and it took me having to teach her how to ride on the road to make her even comfortable with riding on residential roads. So it all depends on the comfort level of each person. Entitled Dad is still steaming when I give him the sanitized card and still threatening to get me fired. But then he sees my bike. His eyes light up and I get a bad feeling. Entitled Dad. I'll make you a deal. You can put my daughter down a level if you give her your bike with all its accessories. Me, furious. What? No, that's my bike. And need I remind you of what's going on right now? I've been touching my bike all day and sneezed on it at least once from my allergies. Do it, or I'll get you fired. Me, go ahead, see how far you'll get. But I am not giving your daughter my bike. It's too big for her anyways, and always will be. Another note, both parents are shorter than me, and their kid is also small. She'll never grow into a bike my size. Entitled Dad at that point shoves me aside, ignoring social distancing, and storms over to grab my bike. I have only a second to react, and well, I yanked down my mask and managed to spit on my bike handlebars. And almost the dad. Gross, I know. Completely wrong right now, I know. But it worked. Entitled Dad yanked his hands back, almost like he had been burned. What the heck? I just stormed over, shoved him back, and grabbed my bike. Next time, try not to upset the girl who is grading your kid. I then grab the report card from him and write something on it. Now, I'm not punishing her, but see this number here? I pointed to the phone number I had written on the card. This is who is going to be calling you about the incident report I'm going to file against you for for both your behavior and your threats, so you'd better answer. Now, good day." I then stormed over to the cleaning station, washed the spit off, and while my bike dried, filled out an incident report with my manager. That whole time, I could hear the entitled dad screaming at me, but I ignored him, shouted a goodbye to the girl, and biked home. I'll update this as things continue, but I honestly had to share this insanity. Like, seriously, I was trying to help his kid. And again, I know that spitting was wrong, but I'd rather spit on my bike than having a stranger touch my bike with unsanitized hands. It was also an in-the-moment thing, and I did get a warning about the spitting. But my manager wasn't too upset, having overheard the situation. Seriously, I lucked out with having him as a manager. Speaking of riding bikes, do you like riding bikes or not? Please let us know. I like taking people's bikes. Am I the jerk for grounding my daughter for calling out how my girlfriend talks to waiters? I'm 47 and I've recently begun dating a woman who's 33 about a month ago. And this week, I arranged for her to meet my daughter, who's 12. We end up going to a restaurant for lunch. My girlfriend does not particularly like interacting with waiters or waitresses, especially those at more casual dining places. She's had bad experiences with them and feels like they often judge her and other customers on her/their food choices. She's also sensitive to entitled attitudes on their part. So whenever she goes out with her friends or with me, she prefers that someone else place her order for her and does the rest of the interactions with the waitstaff, handing them the paid bill, asking for utensils, refills, etc. So when it comes time to order and the waitress is asking my girlfriend what she wants, my girlfriend looks directly at me and I order for her. My girlfriend wants another fork in the middle of our meal, and she asks me to ask the waitress for it. This triggers my daughter because the waitress happened to be within earshot, and my daughter starts asking my girlfriend why she refuses to acknowledge waitstaff. I tell my daughter to be polite, but she continues on and says that when the busboy came over, she could have at least thanked him for taking her soup dish away. She then says, "They're all human beings," and it came out louder than we all expected, and diners nearby stared at us. We end up cutting our meal short because my girlfriend was obviously offended, and I drive home with my daughter. I told her that this was no way to treat a woman who I love and who I want to be part of our lives. I end up grounding her for embarrassing my girlfriend in front of everybody. Am I the jerk? My daughter is growing up and needs to learn that not everybody approaches situations how she does, and that it's ignorant to just write them off as rude, or even worse, to raise an issue with them about it. Also, I have to add that she claims my girlfriend is so rude and idolizes her late mother, who would regularly tip 30%, yet she is the one who raised her voice in public. Well, what do you think? Is it right for OP to ground his daughter because of this, or is his daughter in the right? Please let us know. I think he would be very compatible with me. Delicious compliance. I used to be a suit for a large corporation and was in charge of a visitor center in the middle of nowhere, 1 hour away from the company's headquarters. The visitor center was attached to a site where technology was prototyped or used for the first time, so many managers working in the same industry came by, had a tour, and maybe some meetings with other suits from HQ. One of our tasks was to create the work plans for the other 25 tour guides. These were mostly smart students in their early 20s, doing this as a temp job 1 or 2 days a week. Most of them were trilingual, German, English, another language, and our guests were in awe when someone could do the tour in their native language, like Russian, Hindi, Korean, or Norwegian. Work was not too hard if you liked talking, pay was very good, 20 euros an hour plus commuting expenses, and the guests were pleasant professionals, other students, or people from our company. On a normal day, there were 7 to 10 guides and each did 4 to 5 tours. In my culture, gifts are not a big deal. You get something on your birthday and on Christmas and maybe bring some flowers when you visit your mother, but that's usually it. Since we had many international guests, I quickly learned that in many countries, it seemed to be normal to bring a really nice gift if you are a guest. So we all trained our guides in properly handling this and not to offend anyone. Since most of our tour guests were from abroad, every tour guide would take at least 1 or 2 gifts home daily, ranging from chocolate to electronic gadgets or booze. We usually shared everything among the guides, but if you did the tour, you had dibs if you really wanted the bottle of whiskey. The only unspoken rule was not to sell it. Some groups were so happy with the tour that they even sent a thank you package to one of their guides. So, over the course of 2 years, we had thousands of groups and even had a space in our storage for the gifts that nobody wanted. We called it the Kish Kish tacky stuff box. Then, the company messed up during the quarterly fiscal reports. The shareholders were angry, and so they did what every other Fortune 500 company does. BS measures to get the board off your back. One of these measures were a program to ensure compliance. So someone was appointed CCO, Chief Compliance Officer, and in charge of making sure there is no bribery going on. A few weeks later, every single employee received 60 pages of legal gibberish explaining what compliance means and what to do and what not. I actually read the contract before signing because my tour guide temps would be spared to sign it if I took the responsibility. Unfortunately, it also said something like, gifts above estimated value of 20 euros cannot be accepted. If you cannot guess the value, they must also not be accepted. So I wrote to the compliance officer, told him about the visitor center, and explained that it would be very rude to refuse a little gift from a Japanese guest. I just did everything by the books and asked for a suggestion what to do. He called me and was pretty angry that we had accepted all these gifts over the years, but still had no clue that it can be offensive to refuse a gift. He said he will revise the compliance document and send me a new one. The new document said that all gifts of uncertain value or above 20 euros must be sent to the compliance officer. They will do a lottery and fairly gift it to someone at headquarters. I signed the new compliance guidelines and plotted my revenge. Of course, my team was sad that the daily gifts were not to be taken home anymore, but they also knew that the CCO would tightly monitor our behavior because we were a potentially easy target. So we Germaned up and did everything in the formally most correct way. We ordered a few hundred boxes and package stamps, company expenses, and started to send 20 to 30 boxes to the CCO's office daily. We used the different tour guides' names and addresses as senders and also used the crap from the Kist. After 3 weeks, I received another angry call from the CCO's assistant. He was abroad for the time with his boss and came back to a pile of boxes. I stated that it was exactly as he wanted it, and if he had a better idea, he should let me know. He suggested we should just store them somewhere and send them by bulk every month. 4 weeks later, we did just that and added an inventory list of every single item. Then my boss did me a favor, went on the company intranet forums and asked what will happen to all of these gifts, since the process seems pretty intransparent to him and that this is exactly the opposite of compliance. This produces so many replies that they felt pushed to make an official statement on the intranet and actually held this tombola, which the CCO's office had to organize. This got the attention from the advisory board, and they asked the CCO if he had nothing better to do than to organize gift lotteries. Half a year later, the guy was fired. We kept the gifts from this point on. Nobody asked ever again. The visitor center shut down in 2013 because the project ended. Am I the jerk for creating a meat-eaters only club at work? I, 32 male, am working long hours in a rather stuffy office environment. However, despite the long hours, or maybe because of them, the management has encouraged lifestyle clubs at the workplace. For example, there's a book club, a movie lovers club, etc. They are free to join and are partially subsidized by the company, which makes joining a no-brainer. The process of creating one is rather simple. You need to have at least 5 members willing to join, a statement of purpose, as well as an approval from HR and upper management in order to be compliant with our workplace regulations. At my workplace, I have a colleague, I'll call Jane, who's 29, and she's been at the office for a little over a year. She is a dedicated vegan and has been since I have known her. However, this has never been an issue or even that relevant. After a merger about 6 months ago, our team has received a number of new team members. A few of them were vegan as well and have taken a liking to Jane. After a conversation between them and Jane discussing the book club, they have decided to start a vegan dinner club. Nobody had an issue with this. Despite this, issues surfaced after the statement of purpose became known after it was filed to HR. In the statement, which passed with HR, one of the rules stated that only vegans, vegetarians, and pescatarians will be welcome, and that all dinner options will be vegan. This rubbed some of us the work way, since it was clearly exclusionary and divisive. Why would meat eaters be excluded if only vegan options would be on the menu? After speaking to Jane, she seemed somewhat distant and mentioned that I didn't understand that this was also a lifestyle club. The workplace soon became divided, but we opted not to file a complaint to HR. However, since the idea of a dinner club appealed to us, we started a burger and steak club, which we wanted to try a different burger or steak place every week. In our statement of purpose, we stated that only meat eaters could apply, due to this being both a culinary and lifestyle club. Soon after, some of the potential members got called to the HR to tell us that the members of the vegan diner club filed a complaint with them, stating that our club was exclusionary, offensive to their lifestyle, and that eating meat, as opposed to not eating meat, was not a lifestyle. Despite this, the club passed with the HR. and the weeks following this, we visited a different burger and steak place every Friday after work and just relaxed after working 50+ hours a week. However, despite my prior friendship with Jane, she now refuses to talk to me and is only spending time with her club members despite everyone's attempts to create a friendly workplace. So Reddit, am I the jerk for creating a meat eaters only club at work? Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk or not? Please let us know. I could go for a juicy steak right now. Am I the jerk for exposing my mom for liking my brother more? Okay, I know the title is really weird, but please just hear me out. This happened a few days ago on a Zoom call with my family. My family, who lives literally all over the world, has a family reunion every year right around now. Due to what's going on, we just did a call on Zoom. Here's a bit of backstory. It's very clear that my mom likes my younger brother more. I'm pretty sure she wishes that I was a son. She claims I'm making up my depression, anxiety, and eating disorders for attention. But whenever my brother has the mildest cold, he stayed home from school and she gave him the luxury treatment. I always have to do all the chores, clean, etc., and oftentimes I'd get in trouble for things he would do. Sometimes she'd even go places, like other states, without me so she and my brother could have some bonding time. My parents are divorced, so my dad can't really help me when I'm at my mom's house because I don't want to tell him. Anyways, right before the Zoom call, I was just hanging out in my room when I hear something break outside. So I come out and it's the pot of this plant my mom was gifted a few years ago. She goes berserk. My brother had knocked it over on the counter and my mom blamed me. I said I'd clean it up after the call. So we're on the Zoom call, and since my mom got the kitchen sink redone months ago, my aunt wanted to see it. But my mom said since I knocked over the plant, in a really mean tone of voice, that it was all my fault she couldn't see the counter. That's when I got really mad. I said that was BS. I was in my room and she knew that and started yelling at my mom about how she always liked my brother more and started listing examples. My family got really angry at my mom and my mom got really angry at me and hung up from the call, and now I'm grounded. I kind of feel like a jerk for yelling at my mom though and doing it in front of pretty much our entire family. Edit. Holy heck. I came back overnight and got 72 replies. Thanks to you guys, I finally called my dad and he's on his way. My dad says the legal stuff is going to be figured out later, but he'll be here in 30 minutes. Thank you guys for all the nice words. It really means a lot. Edit. For all the people asking, I'm 16, almost 17 though, and my parents divorced when I was 12, when my mom started getting kind of weird, and I guess it just got worse. Right now, I'm putting my stuff in boxes because I'm moving out. Finally. Thanks again for all the support. Edit. So I'm at my dad's house now, and it's official. I'm moving in. I already had a room at my dad's house, but I'm unpacking most of my stuff now, and a lot of family members texted me to see if I was okay. I am. I know I've said thanks a lot, but honestly, without advice from you guys, I'd still be at my mom's house. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend that she's not allowed to ask me to do anything after a long day of work? Clarification. So it seems people missed the part where I say that I do help her with things. I just built a large piece of furniture with her last weekend on my only day off, and I went to Home Depot with her to pick up materials to fix our fence. Look, I'm just asking that she try to give me alone time when I get home from work, and that unless something urgent needs to be taken care of, that she really can't do herself, if she can hold off the requests until my day off. I'm 32, male, and my girlfriend, who's 28, we've been together for 4 years and are both residents. Her in psychiatry, where she's working from home now, and I'm in medicine. We also just recently moved houses, so there's the added stress of that. We have recently been arguing a lot, as I'm tired from working 12+ hours a day and coming home to conversation about unimportant stuff, like what interesting patient she had, or what decoration we should get for the table. On top of that, she'll ask me to help take the trash out or load the dishwasher, tasks I would normally be okay doing, but I'm just so tired nowadays. What she's claiming is that I can't be that tired to carry on simple conversation or help out with small tasks. She claims to do everything around the house, like cooking, laundry, cleaning, but that's not entirely true, because I help her build furniture, move heavy things around, etc. She says she wants me to contribute more and not just, quoting her words, come home and eat and plop down on the sofa and go to sleep. From my perspective, I really am just that tired. I work 6 days a week, and then on my one day off, I have to help her do stuff like build furniture, build the fence, and other things that she can't do by herself. And on top of that, she complains that we don't spend quality time together, so I have to go for walks with her and go out to eat when all I really want to do is fall asleep in front of the TV. So in order to stave off more arguments and whining from her, I suggested we make a rule that beyond a few minutes of conversation over dinner, she's not allowed to carry out long protracted conversations with me about non-urgent stuff, and she's not allowed to ask me to do anything non-urgent as well, like take out the trash or do the dishes. She's basically sitting at home doing minimal work from 9 to 5 p.m. some days, and even has some half days off due to a decreased patient volume. So I don't feel bad that she has to do most of the housework. Am I the jerk about this rule? And am I being too mean as she claims? Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk or is he right? Please let us know. Boyfriend of the year right here. Fire me for talking about unionizing? I'll spill all your dirty secrets. I used to work for a plasma collection center back from 2008 to 2010. Even though I was a certified phlebotomist, I was placed up in reception and I slowly worked my way up to senior receptionist and trainer. I was also training for quality control and was known for keeping detailed notes of issues that were in need of fixing or training, which I would forward on to management. Some of the things I'd keep track of were violations of FDA and GHA, German Health Authority, since we were run by a German/Swiss company, as well as OSHA issues. Because I wasn't seeing anything being done, I eventually stopped reporting the issues to avoid being labeled a troublemaker and just kept time/date info, and if I could, I got pictures with date stamps just to cover my own butt in case something bad went down. Fast forward to June of 2010, and I was talking with one of my coworkers about the proposed cuts to benefits and the high turnover rate at our center. They were complaining to me about being afraid to call in sick because others had been fired for it, and I mentioned that they were putting donors in danger by us being sick when we weren't allowed to wear face masks unless we were in the back of the donor area, and even then it was the clear face shields to prevent getting hit if someone leaked on us. Without thinking about it, I talked about how unions protected against this sort of thing in other medical fields, and how that might be something we should consider to help protect us. The coworker got weirdly quiet, but I figured it was because I was talking about a subject most people don't like talking about. Nothing really happened until about August, when another coworker grabbed my ponytail while I was working with a donor and yanked down on it, jerking my head back. I had informed everyone I worked with to never touch my hair because it was a trauma trigger for me, and this coworker knew I would wind up in panic mode from this. She had seen it before when a donor touched my hair, so this was deliberate. I remember telling her to not do that again, or I would make her get away. She, of course, walked up and yanked my hair even harder, and I hit her. The supervisors went into damage control mode as I fled the area, still in a panic response, and one of them cornered me and demanded I write down what happened because I had assaulted someone on the property. I wrote my side, as well as told them to check security footage since the camera was aimed right at the booth I was working at and had clear views of the events. Turned out, everyone else told an entirely different and creepily similar story than what I told, and the footage couldn't be found even though less than half an hour had passed. I was fired less than an hour later and escorted off the premises after being given 5 minutes to clear out my locker and get my belongings. So, on to the revenge, which was two-pronged. My partner was there on that day and saw what happened and tried to offer to write up what he saw, but was denied. So the next time he went in, it wound up being screened by the coworker who yanked my hair, who didn't even get a write-up, and asked her loudly enough that the whole reception area could hear. So, how's those 50 shekels of silver, Judas? Was it worth it? Which left her in tears, and another person had to finish screening him. He wound up being banned for 6 months for his attitude, but he claims it was more than worth it. While this was going on, I had been reaching out to the various organizations and departments that oversaw plasma donation and collection, the FDA, OSHA, CDC, GHA, and the like. I informed them of the fact that we always clean prior to an inspection, but we didn't keep things that clean day to day, and suggested a surprise inspection should be in order. I also handed over copies of everything I'd collected and tried to report, but always got shut down. I learned a few months later that all of the management and several of the other techs and supervisors were all suddenly reassigned, and the FDA, GHA, and OSHA had all slammed fines on the center for violations dating back almost the whole time I worked there. I have 10,000 followers on TikTok. I'm famous. Karen refuses to get a job. I've always been on my sister about trying to get her to work. Long story short, our parents made me get and keep a job at 15, or they threatened to kick me out, while our parents spoil her and aren't pushing her to get a job. They'll suggest places for her to work, but never say, get a job or get out, like they did with me. She's 21, had a job for 2 months, walked out after deciding she didn't like it, and has never worked again after that, claiming trauma from her previous workplace as an excuse not to find a new job. She went to college for 1 semester, but quit after she realized the teachers and other students weren't going to do her homework for her. The moment anything involves effort on her part, she quits. She has zero work ethic. She's used to giving my parents puppy dog eyes and getting her way. Shocking when the rest of the world doesn't work like that. Last time we spoke, I told her she should be looking for work even if it's part-time. My mom tried to get her a job. My mom's company needed temp checkers and their security gates. Part-time, 20 hours a week, $25 an hour. Incredible opportunity for my sister. All she had to do was apply and she would have been given the job. But no, sis. I don't need to work. My followers send me money. They buy me gifts too. Me. That's not a stable income. What happens when you want to move out? You'll need a steady job. Sis. I have 10,000 followers on TikTok. I'm famous. My videos have almost 70,000 views. Me. You need a lot more followers and views to be considered famous. Sis. Sure, right. Like you know anything about TikTok. Me. I may not use TikTok, but I know how being an influencer works. You need millions of followers. Sis. Whatever. This is just to hold me down until the big stuff happens. Me. What big stuff? You know how it goes. TikTok is where agents discover talent. I'll be seen and I'll be found. An agent will get me a big job on camera and I'll be really famous. I'll make so much that I won't have to work. So shut up and stop bugging me about getting a job. Me. You do realize acting isn't an easy job. The days are long, longer than your typical 8-hour workday. There's makeup and costumes and doing scenes a million times until the director thinks you got it. I have a lot of theater experience. I know it's not Hollywood, but acting is a tough job, no matter where you're doing it. Sis, just shut up. She stormed off into her room and started crying. Her typical behavior when someone won't tell her what she wants to hear. My dad and I got into an argument later about it. He says it's not right of me to crush her dreams. I'm not crushing anything. I'm being honest with her. Her followers have sent her a grand total of $384 since she started her TikTok a year ago. 2 followers sent her presents for her birthday after she posted a video begging for gifts. I saw the video. She claims that her family neglects her and forgets her birthday every year. She's not famous. She's not making anywhere near enough to claim she doesn't need to work. Her chances of getting discovered are nearly zero. She needs to get over herself and take a realistic look at the world, but she won't because my parents coddle her and let her stay in her fantasy. Speaking of TikTok, what do you think of it? Do you like it or do you hate it? Please let us know. TikTok around the clock, speakers blowing my speakers up, something like that. 4 years ago, I was homeless and bankrupt because my mother stole my identity. Today, I bought my first house. 4 years ago, I had my identity stolen by my own mother. She took out loans and credit cards in my name. Somehow the bank allowed this and racked up thousands of dollars in unpaid loans and credit cards. A bank actually sued me, unbeknownst to me, because my mother had her address listed under the loan, and the court granted them a levy against my bank account to take out over $10,000 and put it towards my unpaid mortgage loan. This, along with a ton of credit cards falsely taken out in my name, my credit score plummeted to below 400. I couldn't even get a 1-bedroom apartment in the worst city in the state. I was homeless, slept in my car, but then my car broke down and I had to trade it in for a working one. Red, cheaper, and smaller. So I couldn't sleep in my car anymore, not enough room. I got a hotel room, but it quickly became too expensive on my minimum wage budget. I spent about 2 weeks sleeping in the car before I saved up enough money to score a weekly rate with a hotel, which was infested with roaches and filth. I spent about 3 months at the hotel, spending literally everything I had on the weekly charge, plus terrible Chinese takeout food from the Rite Aid nearby. The Chinese guy knew me so well that he would pad my plate full of food. I suppose he could sense my struggle. Finally, after 3 months, I was able to pass a licensure test that allowed me to get a job paying a few extra bucks than minimum wage. The few bucks made a big difference and allowed me to start saving money instead of just dumping it every week. My credit started to slowly go up too, but not much. I was somehow able to score a one-bedroom apartment, literally right across the street from the one that declined me 3 months ago. I still had terrible credit, but I guess he was willing to take a chance on me if I could pay the deposit, which now I could. A few months go by and I start saving more money, but not much. Then I earned my degree about a year later with a few dollars in savings. I was able to get a much better job with a much better salary. It wasn't a crazy amount, but it allowed me to start saving more. I saved every penny, other than for rent, car payments, gas, and food. I didn't even have insurance. I got pulled over and explained the situation to the officer, and miraculously, he let me go. He told me to get insurance though, and about 6 months later, I did. Fast forward 3 years later, after saving every penny and doing literally everything I can to build my credit, paying off my mother's debts she put in my name, pleading with debt collectors, claiming hardship, and getting reduced amounts to pay. Everything you could imagine. My credit started to slowly go up. I made every payment on time and didn't go above an 18% utilization rate. I wore the same t-shirt and pants to work every day. My coworker commented on it once, and before I could say anything, she goes, "But you probably just have tons of the same shirts, huh? Like Mark Zuckerberg." If only she knew how different. But shout out Zuck for saving me on that one. Fast forward to a few months ago when I started browsing to get a new rental because my landlord is a jerk. I won't go into details, but I'm sure y'all can imagine. I start looking for rentals and they're so expensive, I think, why don't I just buy a house? I laughed. I knew there was no way I could pay a house. A former loser, homeless, bankrupt kid with no family like me owning a home? Forget about it. But I was intrigued, so I called a real estate agent and she told me I needed 20% down payment. Dude, I definitely don't have that. I gave up, but I got interested again. Now with my lease running out after turning a 30 days notice in and my best rental option being a one-bedroom shack for 4 times what it's worth. I called another real estate agent. I told her I don't have much money to put down, and she tells me, "That's okay, you might qualify for an FHA loan." What the heck? What the heck is an FHA loan? I ask. Long story short, I did qualify and was able to look for houses with 3.5% down payment. Wow, truly life-changing. Then I found this beautiful home with a view and snagged it. My realtor was worried it wouldn't be approved for FHA, but it came through, and it was. Thanks everyone for listening. I feel like I've finally gotten out of it.
My heart feels so warm right now. What is this feeling and how do I get rid of it?
Am I the jerk for refusing to pay to repair my girlfriend's violin after my nephews broke it? My girlfriend is a talented musician. She plays multiple instruments and has an angelic voice. She's dedicated her life to this excruciating task, and it's truly paid off. My sister has 2 boys, a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. They are extremely active and love running around, which usually ends in a mess being created. The boys adore my girlfriend. They love everything about her, which I find very cute. They came to stay with me for a day when my sister and my girlfriend were out of town, separately. The 10-year-old is learning the violin, and he insists on playing like my girlfriend. I thought it would be harmless to bring out my girlfriend's violin for him to play something, and to calm his hyperactive self down. Granted, it was slightly too big for him, but he was plucking the strings and seemed to know how to use it. I had to dash out for an emergency. I was just next door, and when I returned after an hour, her bow was almost completely frayed. I took the violin away and scolded both of them. My girlfriend came back home to a frayed bow. She was understandably upset, and to my surprise, even more upset when I told her the entire story. She asked me if I would like to pay for the repair or replacement of the violin bow. I thought that my sister would have to chalk up the fees because it was her kids, my nephews, who caused the damage in the first place. My girlfriend disagreed and defended my sister not paying the fees when I prompted her to. I keep refusing every time she asks. I'm not stopping from practicing either. She has a spare bow. Am I really the jerk? I shouldn't be faulted for someone else's kid's problems. Edit. Apparently, there were way more problems with the bow than just frayed hairs, so I'm paying for the replacement of the bow. The bow cost several $1,000s and was more expensive than I ever imagined. I also rehaired her spare bow and discovered that instruments are really expensive. You could literally buy a secondhand car with that cash. She bought a separate place for her small instruments, flute, violin, and guitar, and locks it when she's done practicing. Well, who do you think should pay for the bow? OP or his sister? Or his girlfriend? Please let us know.
What's the big deal? They were just having fun.
Entitled mom comes to my house to make me apologize for being rude. I was in the 4th grade, let's say. There was this kindergarten girl who lived on my street. I didn't really know her all that well, so I decided to try not to make any contact with her. One morning, as we were boarding the bus, I took my usual seat. She followed me into my seat, and I politely asked her to switch to a different seat, as my friend and I sat together pretty much every day. She said no and sat there stubbornly. Ignoring her for the rest of the ride, we got to school and no more words were spoken. However, on the way back, she sat down with me again, despite me asking her not to. This time, however, she seemed eager to talk. She grabbed hand sanitizer from her backpack and started putting it in her hair. I stared awkwardly and told her you weren't supposed to do that. She then proceeded to start crying and told me that she would tell her mom about how I was being mean. I shrugged it off, and once we got to our street, I went to my house and she followed me. I asked what she was doing, and she told me she was remembering which house I lived in so that her mom could come punish me. Again, I shrugged it off and went inside, locking the door and resuming my 4th grade post-school activities. When I heard the doorbell ring, I had forgotten about the girl and assumed it was my mom getting home from work. What I did not expect was the girl and her mom peering through the door. I gazed back at them for a while and decided to open the door. I regretted it instantly. The mom started yelling about me being rude to her daughter, saying things like,
"She is just in kindergarten,"
and other cliche Karen things, while I stood there trying to make out what the girl had told her mom. Evidently, she had stated I had called her hair ugly and that I had laughed at her for being stupid. The mom then proceeded to try and come inside to talk to my mom. I told her my mom wasn't home and that she couldn't just enter my house. Entitled mom then said,
"Fine, we'll wait here until your mother gets home."
I laughed at her and told her my mother would side with me. Eventually, after about 3 minutes, the girl said she was hungry and they had to go home. Luckily for me, the girl or her mom didn't try to talk to me again. That part about the hand sanitizer in her hair though.
And you thought that was funny, didn't you?
I did. Am I the jerk for throwing away my wife's sketchbook? My wife and I have been married for a year, and I'm incredibly lucky that I get to spend the rest of my life with her. She's from an extremely rough upbringing that taught her to never speak up, be non-confrontational, don't speak when spoken to, etc. She's always the first to apologize after a fight. She's very passive and struggles to find her voice. I personally think that she is too empathic for her own good. With my help, she's learning to be more assertive. After an argument with anyone, instead of finding a solution to the problem or compromising, she retreats to a room and begins to draw in her sketchbook. She's a phenomenal artist, but I wish she wouldn't shut everyone out who is trying to help her. She'll be completely silent for a while, just drawing, and then come out to confront the issue. Her father, whom she has a terrible and strained relationship with, contacted her recently asking for money. Then her father showed up at our door with 2 other men unannounced. My wife and my father-in-law got in a huge argument. I've never seen a grown woman chastised by her father before. Her older brother managed to chase him out. When he left, she broke down and her brother had to comfort her. Her brother had to leave, so when we were alone and she was somewhat calm, I tried to reason with her, suggesting she call her father to officially end their toxic relationship. My wife practically ignored me in favor of retreating to a corner to draw in her infamous sketchbook. The next day, I tried again. Her father will always look down upon her, view her as inferior if she even shows a hint of vulnerability. I urged her to put her foot down, but she went to go draw. I couldn't take being ignored, and I wanted to stop enabling her unhealthy coping mechanism. When she was out, I threw out her sketchbook with her drawing utensils. When she found out, she was upset. I explained to her that I did it for her best interest. I thought that time would heal this attachment to her sketchbook, but she's still mad at me. Am I the jerk? I wasn't doing it maliciously, but she needs to learn to confront her issues with people she has problems with. Edit. I got her a new sketchbook and expensive art supplies. I apologized, and I now understood that it's a healthy coping mechanism. I assumed it was unhealthy because in my opinion, she was using it as a crutch, but I now know that I'm in the wrong. She's staying with her brother for a week so that they can properly figure out her father's situation. I didn't realize how serious it truly was. Well, what do you think? Was it wrong of OP to throw out his wife's sketchbook? Or do you think he was in the right? Please let us know.
I'd throw him out, to be honest.
Check your employee handbook. It's right there. This story happened about 14 years ago when I worked for a now defunct electrical store in the UK whose name I won't mention, but it rhymed with vomit. At the time, I was a teenager and reliant on public transport to get to work. There was only one bus an hour to this out-of-town retail park, and it was scheduled to arrive at 8:55, which theoretically would give me enough time to walk from the bus stop to the store ready to start my shift at 9 a.m. However, on many occasions, the bus was late due to traffic, so I'd sometimes arrive at work at 9:05, which wasn't a problem because the store was usually quiet until 11 a.m., but the manager accepted that I would make up any of this time at the end of my shift. So this went on for about a year with no problems until a new deputy manager was brought in from another store. She was a clock watcher and wanted me to be there at 9 a.m. every day and wasn't accepting any excuses for buses being late or anything else. I asked her if I could simply change my shift from 9 to 17 to 9:10 to 17:10, which I thought was reasonable. She refused completely and told me,
You have to be on time for your shift. Check your employee handbook. It's right there.
I did check my employee handbook, and it did state exactly what she said. But on the same page, it said that every employee working a shift longer than 6 hours is entitled to a 60-minute uninterrupted lunch break. Uninterrupted is the key word here. Later that day, I was about halfway through my lunch break in the staff room when she came in and said that the shop floor was busy. There's not enough salespeople out there, and there's a customer waiting to buy a plasma TV. Nobody volunteered, so she specifically picked me and told me to go and serve the customer and then come back to continue my lunch break. This wasn't uncommon, and it wasn't really a problem usually. I served the customer, processed the sale, and then went back to the staff room to continue my break. 50 minutes later, she comes back to the staff room with a face like thunder, asking why I'm still on my lunch break.
You should have been back out on the shop floor 20 minutes ago. Why are you still in here?
I calmly replied that I still have 10 minutes left on my 60-minute uninterrupted lunch break. I explained that by taking me off lunch 30 minutes early, that wasn't an interrupted lunch break before I smiled and told her, check the employee handbook. It's right there. She was furious. She went to the store manager and said I had taken an extra long lunch break, but when he came in to speak to me, I explained to him that my break was interrupted by the deputy manager. She protested and said that just because I have to spend a few minutes with a customer doesn't mean I'm entitled to an extra 30-minute break. The store manager wasn't happy with the situation, but agreed that I was entitled to my uninterrupted break as per company policy. By now, it was time for me to go back out on the shop floor, so I put my lunch back in my locker and left. She didn't talk to me for the rest of the day, but she didn't ask any of us to serve customers during our lunch breaks ever again either. Would I be the jerk if I excluded my oldest kid from any inheritance at all? I'm kind of at a loss here and thought I would turn to ye old internets for input. I'll try to keep this short, but also make sure that I get the full story. I have 5 kids. The issue is with my oldest daughter. When she was in high school, she was always upset that we couldn't afford to give her the life she wanted. We couldn't purchase her a car or send her away on school trips. We just didn't have the money. She would always say things like, Bobby gets to go, it's not fair that I can't go, and things of that nature. Now, to be clear, we weren't able to do anything for any of our kids. None of them got cars bought for them, none of them got to go on expensive school trips, and none of them had anything saved for college. We just simply did not have the money. That said, we always did what we could. There was always food on the table, presents that the kids wanted at Christmas and birthdays, and we always gave them all of the support that we could. We weren't poor, but we didn't have a lot of free-flowing cash either. Now, around her junior year of high school, my oldest daughter started getting a lot of special treatment from teachers. Things that were just odd, like house sitting and things like that. She had always been a special kid, so I played it off like it wasn't any big deal and let her do her thing, driving her to and from her stuff. But the stuff started getting weirder and weirder. So I started to look into it and found out what she was telling people at school. Things like we never fed her, or she had to buy her own clothes, which after she had a job, she did, but only because she wanted things that were too expensive for me to justify and stuff like that. So naturally, people took pity on her and started giving her stuff. I told her that what she was doing was wrong, but she just denied it all and moved on doing what she did. Soon enough, she was 18 and moved out, then cut contact. We were heartbroken and tried to reach out, but she blocked us across the board. From what I know, she's had a really hard life since. So for the last 2 years, I've had 4 kids and we've all moved on. Here's the would I be the jerk part. I recently came into a boatload of money, like a really solid amount that will set me and my family up for a good long while. My wife and I are at odds at what to do with it. We want to set up trust funds for the kids so that they don't have to worry about college, a down payment of their first house, etc. However, she wants to include our oldest in the trust, and I do not. I think she lost the claim to anything that we have now when she cut ties with the family. So Reddit, would I be the jerk if I excluded my oldest daughter from an inheritance? Well, what do you think? Should OP cut out his daughter from the inheritance or not? Please let us know.
Cut her out and put me in there. I'll gladly accept it.
Friend's entitled mom thinks I'll give her free food. Been waiting and hoping I would soon gain enough karma to post on this particular sub, so I'm glad I finally can. Anyway, on to the story. This happened many years ago when I was still a teenager, and I was working at a local Mexican restaurant and had been doing so for a few years at that point. I had a best friend who we'll call E, who would frequently come into my store to have a quick lunch and visit with me because her work was right across the street. We would usually carpool together and spend time with one another when we could, and were honestly the best of friends. Despite this though, I really couldn't stand her mother. My friend had always been a mommy's girl, but as she grew older and started to hang out with her friends more and wasn't glued to her mother's side anymore, her mom was rude and disrespectful to anyone who hung out with her, trying to alienate her daughter. And since I was her best friend, she was particularly horrible towards me. I have another story about how horrible this lady was when me and E moved in together. Whenever I visited, we never stayed at her house. We always went to mine or hung out somewhere else because E knew I couldn't stand her. One day it was my mid-shift and E came into my restaurant, this time with her mother. This was the first time they had come together, and of course E asked for my section. I walked up saying hi to E and her mom seemed really surprised that I worked at this particular restaurant.
"Oh, I didn't know you worked here,"
she said in her normal condescending tone, although it sounded all sweet, like I had become an expert at recognizing her behavior at this point.
"No wonder E likes to eat here. She must get all of her food for free."
No. I still have to charge her. I don't own this place, and I don't have the ability to give away free food for no reason. It's the same price for everyone, I said simply, and I took their order, and E looked at me apologetically. She knew I didn't like her mother too much and would usually not bring her along like this. I was civil though, and the day went fine without another hitch. A few days later, E's mom came back to my restaurant with about 3 of her friends. I didn't know it then, but this lady was a definite entitled mom and a Karen. There's always at least one in a group of ladies. She asked for my section, so I had no choice but to wait on her. But before I even got to her table, I could hear her blabbering on to her friends about how,
"My daughter's friend works here,
and
I will convince her to give us free food and drinks."
I was really confused as I told her last time I did not have the ability to give free food, and why she was telling her friends that was beyond me. I greeted the table and she greeted me all sweet-like, as if we were best friends or something, as she began to rattle off her order of a few appetizers and drinks. I wanted to nip this free food fantasy in the bud as soon as possible, so I turned to her as politely as possible and said, "Sure thing, ma'am. Will this all be on one check or separate?" Usually with a group of ladies, they split the bill more often than not, so it wasn't an off-the-mark question. She looked at me confused.
"What do you mean? Isn't this going to be free? You give my daughter free food all the time,"
she said. No I don't. And I explained this to you last time you came in here, that I can't just give away free food, and I most certainly cannot give away free drinks, of all things. Even with my own employee discount, the drinks were never included in that. She looked all flustered, and her friends were all looking at her almost expectantly.
"Oh, come on, OP. We just want to have a good time tonight, and I know you can talk to your manager or something, right? Come on, we're friends too, aren't we?"
she said. I was like, really? You treat me like a lowlife for years, and now all of a sudden we're friends? In all honesty, I didn't even know this lady's name for crying out loud. I tried to introduce myself several times, but she would just sneer at me and walk away. I knew E, but their last names were different because her mom had her before she met her current husband. "I'm sorry, I can't help you get free food. You need to pay like everyone else," I said calmly.
"Fine then,"
she said very loudly, catching the attention of other customers.
"We don't want the appetizers or drinks then. Just water, and we will be needing separate checks too."
She was huffing and puffing, I guess because she was now embarrassed in front of her friends. They got their water and their food, and near the end of the meal, I guess she figured she could try her luck with free food again as she stopped me.
"We are almost done here. Can you get us some dessert? I know they are just sitting in the freezer, so no one has to know you took them, so you won't need to charge us."
I sighed, getting tired of this at this point. "No ma'am, I cannot give you free food, drinks, desserts, or anything. I'm sorry, but I could lose my job for stealing products, and actually, all our desserts are freshly made by hand. The only thing we have frozen is the fried ice cream plate. For obvious reasons, it needs to be frozen.
Oh, come on, OP. You have already practically ruined my lunch date with my friends and embarrassed me. You owe me some compensation,
she said, folding her arms across her chest like I was going to concede to her demands. I said no, I said firmly. Now, do you want to purchase a dessert, or would you like your check now? I asked, simply making sure to emphasize the purchase part. She was all huffy, but the ladies took their checks, but I heard her talking to her friends how they shouldn't tip me at all for being so mean and disrespectful, and she said,
"We'll get her to give us free meals next time. Must be management or something, I'm sure of it."
Thankfully, she was the only one who didn't tip me. I was a little worried as they seemed to at first believe her crazy about getting free food, but they realized it was just her boasting and were not going to stiff me just because she told them to. She had actually tried this 3 more times, and each time I had to explain things to her again and again and again. Sometimes with the same friends, sometimes with different friends, even once with her husband and son in tow. Finally, when I saw her a 4th time, I ran up to the host and told him not to sit that lady in my section. I told him to please just pass me over this once. Seating was determined by a rotation of the employees to make sure we all got a good amount of tables. Thankfully, he did, but that didn't stop her from screaming at me from across the restaurant, forcing me to acknowledge her. "Hello, can I help you with something?" I asked as nicely as I could muster.
"I want you to wait on us. I asked for your section after all, but some boy is now waiting on us,"
she said angrily. "I'm sorry, I have a full section right now and can't take on another table. Boy is a great waiter and he'll take good care of you." I left no room for further comment and just walked away from her. My friend later got an earful from her mom about how rude I was to her and that she thought I would be more generous and that every time she went to my restaurant, she never got anything free and it wasn't fair that she had to pay for her meals. E was so embarrassed and apologized profusely and even tried to give me money for her mom stiffing me. Of course, I didn't take it. Thankfully, her mom never came back to my store alone again, although occasionally with E, but E made sure they didn't make demands about free food with me ever again. My mother's, hopefully, last attempt at keeping me from moving in with my girlfriend. Some time ago, I and my girlfriend, who from now on we'll refer to as Eva, which is a fake name obviously, got into a dispute, to say the least, with my mother, who heavily despises Eva. Well, since then, I finally got my driver's license and a car from my father. A 30-year-old trash can with an engine and 4 wheels, which was his first car as well. Well, starting it today to drive to work, for the first time since I got the car, was one of the most pleasant sounds and feelings, even though I heard it countless times during the past 18 years. Why? It symbolizes a fully independent life with Eva for me, that the effort and work we've put up during the last several months haven't been in vain. Well, today after work, I had to stop over at my, now former, house to take some stuff. I wasn't happy at all about it. But hey, I ain't leaving my stuff there. Eva stayed in the car. My plan was to take the stuff and get away from my mother as soon as possible. Well, when Mom saw me, she went full,
"Ah, I knew you'd come back begging. I know it's a bad idea to move in with that jerk."
Me, "Chill, I'm just here for some things and then I'll see myself out."
BS. You're just too afraid to admit that you let such a filthy and disgusting jerk in your life, and now you'll regret it.
Me, "Just stop, please. I'm not in the mood for this. Keep it for yourself. I really love her. I'm happy being with her. She's my light in the darkness. True story. She's helped me through some tough things." Mom,
What's so lovable about her? She has the mentality and look of a cow.
Me, "Shut up. You have a problem with her? Fine. But don't you dare to ever voice it ever again."
Don't talk to me like that. I gave birth to you.
Like I'd care if you didn't. Mom, visibly shocked.
You're going nowhere with her. You're my kid. You do as I say.
Me, an 18-year-old kid. That means I can do whatever I want, and you have no right to confine me here. This went on as I was packing my stuff up. I was now done packing and headed for the door. Well, she blocked them by her sheer weight and size. So I went towards the door to the backyard and went to the car through the gate, while hearing my mother throwing insults directed towards me and Eva all around. When my mother was inside of the car and Eva and I passionately kissed, hopefully so my mother would finally realize the resistance against our relationship is futile and just to upset my mother. A few hours ago, I got a call from my mother. Knowing her, I was reluctant, but what if something bad was actually happening? Mom,
I've been thinking about you two. I won't lie, I hate her, but I see you like her. You're old enough. I'll get out of your way. Hopefully you'll be able to forgive me.
I won't lie. I nearly broke down in tears there. I just replied something along, We'll need some time." Then she ended the call. What could it be? My dad's speech about me and Eva? He's gotten to like Eva. My mother's realization that there's nothing she can do? Or something else? Well, my mother has hopefully finally found some sense in her and will find a way to get along with Eva without insulting each other. But yeah, unlikely. She's probably just plotting something out or wants to try a different approach. Am I the jerk for refusing to rehome my snakes so my fiance's kids can have more room? My fiance and I have been together 4 years. He had 2 sons, one who's 7 and the other who's 11. We bought a house together a couple years ago, 3 beds and 2 baths. It's not huge, but it also has a finished basement. The boys stay in the 2 extra rooms when my fiance has them. I keep snakes, which I've done since I was a kid. I currently have 8. My fiance also loves animals, but he's more into lizards and tropical fish. I spent a lot of money and time building custom enclosures in the basement for my snakes, which my fiance supported. The enclosure is my pride and joy, and we also have an aquarium and my fiance's geckos down there too. He talked to me the other day and said since the boys are getting older, their rooms are becoming pretty small for them, especially for his older son. He wants to move his son's room to the basement so we can turn his old room into a nursery in the future. For the record, we aren't planning on having kids for at least 2 years. I of course said no. I have a couple large snakes that cannot fit anywhere else, and the basement is good for the humidity they require. Plus, disassembling and moving my enclosures will be difficult. His oldest son is 11, and I don't think he needs an entire basement for his room, especially when they don't live here full time. My fiance said I should rehome my boa and false water cobra, my biggest snakes, to make room, and they might be a danger to any future babies anyway. I completely disagree. I said no way. His kids don't need an entire basement, and I won't get rid of my animals I've had longer than I've known him. He wants us to move my smaller snakes upstairs, but they're fine where they are too. My fiance says I should put family first over animals, and he'd rehome his geckos to make more room too. I am vehemently against this, and it led to a fight. He has always known about my love for reptiles and snakes in particular. To him, I'm being unreasonable. Edit. To clarify, 2 years is the minimum time for having kids, not the max. I'm 29 and not in a rush. We want another home in the future and renovated this one for more selling power in the future. My snakes are boa, false water cobra, ball python, corn snake, 2 garters, Mexican black king, and rat snake. Well, who do you agree with? OP or her fiance? Please let us know. Karen harasses McDonald's over fries. I, female 16, work at McDonald's. A woman, about 65 years old, who for purposes that should be clear by the title of this post, we will call Karen, came through our drive-thru one night and ordered a large fry, barbecue sauce, and a large drink. Now, this was a Sunday night, and if you've ever worked in customer service, you know what that means. Self-righteous church people, and lots of them, all day long. Needless to say, I'd been there for 7 hours with 2 more to go, so I was not feeling very friendly. However, I handed Karen her order and was about to send her on her way when she growls, "Are these fries fresh?" So I politely told her yes, they had come out of the fryer less than a minute before. "I wanted them fresh from the oil," she screeched back at me. I halfway expected bat wings and talons to appear as she carried me away to a heck worse than my sad McDonald's window on a Sunday night, if there is a heck worse than that. I explained we could not make a whole new basket of fries just for her as we had fresh fries already. I closed the window and she sped away. 30 seconds later, I hear my name over the headset. It's the girl taking orders at first window. "Hey, there's a woman I'm sending your way. She says she didn't get barbecue sauce and now she's had to wait in line for it for so long her fries are cold." I immediately knew who it was. Karen pulls up looking very smug, like she just won the prize for biggest pain in the butt all week, which she had. She hands me the fries and flashes her fangs. I explained to my manager what was going on, after which she took the bag, opened the window, and handed them back. After arguing with the woman, my manager walked away. Karen proceeds to scream that she never got her barbecue sauce and now her fries have gotten cold. I told her she did in fact get her barbecue sauce and she hissed back, "Are you calling me a liar?" I simply asked, "Are you telling me my manager doesn't know how to bag an order correctly?" After more yelling about cold fries, I told her, "Microwave them," and walked away. Time goes by, and we're still extremely busy. The phone rings and a different manager answers, listens for a while, and hangs up. You'll never guess who was calling about her cold fries. Speaking of McDonald's, what's your favorite item on their menu? Please let us know.
5 McChickens, extra mayonnaise and pickles.
Yes. Am I the jerk for treating my daughter better than her half-siblings? My ex-girlfriend and I had a daughter, 17 female, just before I finished my last year of medical school. Things went south with our relationship during the pregnancy, mostly because I was so busy with my schooling that she had to do most of the legwork. We've since broken up, and she is now married with 2 other kids, a daughter who's 15 and a son who's 13. And I am now married, and we have 1 other kid who's 8 months old. I've shared custody of my daughter 50-50 since day 1. My wife and I met during residency. We are both radiologists and do quite well for ourselves. As such, we have the means to provide a lot of things for our 2 kids. My ex is an SHAM, but her husband owns a small business, and while they are not rich, they do live comfortably. While my ex is happy that our daughter gets the privileges that she does, she has always expressed a mild resentment towards the fact that her other 2 kids do not enjoy the same benefits. She has never expected that we buy things for her other kids, just that we try not to overdo it as to not create a divide between my daughter and her half-siblings. I understand this, as I did not want there to be hostility in the home that my daughter lives in half the time. I have also taught my daughter to treat others equally and made her understand the place of privilege she comes from so that she never looks down on her siblings. She's become a very down-to-earth and bright young woman, and we're extremely proud of her. However, things came to a head with my ex last week though, on my daughter's 17th birthday. My daughter expressed near the beginning of high school that she wanted to pursue medicine like her stepmother and I. We never pushed her towards this. We've guided her along the way to ensure that she has a competitive application, good references, etc. at our alma mater college, Harvard. She has worked extremely hard to get the grades she has through high school and is quite likely to receive an acceptance with the reference we helped her secure. To reward her for everything, we surprised her with a new car on her 17th birthday. She never needed one before, but will to travel to and from college, etc. And also informed her that we would be fully taking care of all of her college expenses. She was over the moon on this, as she never expects/feels entitled to anything. She called her mom soon after to give her the good news, but apparently my ex did not share in the joy as much as she had hoped. My ex called me soon after to express how unfair it was that my daughter would be showing up with this brand new car when they can't even afford it for themselves, let alone their other kids. Her other daughter is also hoping to pursue medicine, but they are unable to afford to pay for her schooling. She thinks these gifts will drive a massive wedge between the sisters, and I feel horrid about it, but I honestly don't know what else I could do. I can't just deny my daughter a free ride to college when we can easily afford it. Am I the jerk here? Edit. There have been a few repeat questions that I wanted to address here. 1. People have suggested that I also help my ex's other daughter with references for school. This is a great idea, and I would be happy to. 2. The reason we purchased the car a year in advance is because we wanted her to have sufficient driving practice before moving to a busier city with busier highways. 3. The reason the car is new is also for safety concerns with a used car. You never know the last person who drove it. Well, what do you think? Is it okay for OP to do these things for his daughter? Or should he not to avoid drama? Please let us know. I'll take that car off her hands for you. Guy ruins 2 hours of my day. I ruin his month. Earlier this week, I had scheduled a trial shift for the position of a server. Unfortunately, they scheduled me on the wrong day, and the manager ended up giving me his number to reschedule. Important for later. So I come in a day or so later, and I was excited. I have worked as a waitress before, and what's going on right now made it very hard to find a job. And that restaurant was also close to my home. In an hour or so in, everything is great. The staff is friendly, and I do whatever I can around the restaurant, which wasn't much since I couldn't take orders yet. And then I get introduced to Tom. Tom is about 30 and the assistant manager. Tom was a jerk from the beginning. He pointed out things I did wrong, even when I couldn't possibly have known that. He was passive-aggressive and would make rude remarks constantly while fake smiling the whole time. He would be hostile while having this calm tone and following every remark with, "Just so you know, I am so tired and other people would be much ruder with you. It is for your own good." I tried to keep my distance. It wasn't his job to train me, but Tom took it one step further. He started following me around and whispering, "Well, at least that's a start," when I cleaned tables and no one was around. I was beginning to lose my patience. I figured that I should go home since even if I got hired, my less than average pay wasn't worth the constant discomfort and borderline bullying from the management. I was ready to leave, told everyone goodbye, thanked them for the opportunity, yada yada, and honestly, I was going to forget everything about Tom. But then he catches me at the door and in the fakest mean girl voice says, "Oh no, what happened?" I inform him that I was going home, to which he reacts by smiling widely and in the most sarcastic tone says, "Oh no, what are we going to do without you?" implying I am useless. I was speechless. I was never in a similar situation before. Suddenly this man, who was 10 plus years older than me, was trying to make me feel like crap. So I went home, and then I remembered I had the number. Usually they don't give it to you, but well, it was my lucky day. I called the manager that was horrified to hear what happened. He apologized profusely and told me he had some complaints before and that he was going to have a talk with Tom and he was getting fired. I hope that those 2 hours were worth losing your job at a fancy restaurant while almost nobody is hiring. Am I the jerk for leaving during my wife's labor? My wife went into labor around 6 p.m. on Sunday. We were expecting twins. It quickly turns into a very painful process. She kept cutting off the blood pressure to my hand when she squeezed and nearly sprayed my shirt with vomit. Around 3 a.m. my dad calls. I work for my dad's company and we had a presentation for clients Monday morning that I had to get ready for. My dad heard my wife was in labor but told me he needed me on this presentation. He said there was nothing I could do to help my wife and delivery, and seeing the baby come out was overrated, and people don't prepare you for what it looks like. He said he needed me to rest up and make myself presentable for the presentation. My wife's labor was progressing very slowly, and we were all certain she would need forceps or other assistance to deliver the babies. I realized that I couldn't help her here, and my dad was counting on me, so I told her I needed to leave. She started screaming at me so loudly that a few nurses rushed over to our room. I ended up doing the presentation with the clients and things went well. I leave the office and see a text on my phone that said my wife delivered an hour ago at around 10:30 a.m. and they had to use forceps. I would have missed the meeting had I stayed, and my dad has given me everything he could possibly give me in life, so I didn't want to let him down. Am I the jerk? I had responsibilities I had to take care of, and while my wife is still screaming at me, saying that she was alone when they destroyed her body, I'm the only one who works, and her mom herself said that she was emotional and overreacting. My wife even went as far as to say that her family would disown her if she was the first of them to divorce, but that she doesn't consider me her husband right now. Well, what do you think? Was it okay for OP to leave, or should he have stayed with his wife while she was in labor? Please let us know. This guy takes the cake. Friend demands I let him and his girlfriend live with me because I won't dip into my emergency money to pay his rent. I had a friend, let's call him Bob. We've known each other for about 5 years. Bob is not good with money. He's the kind of guy that will buy a super cheap product multiple times because it breaks or wears down, instead of buying a slightly more expensive version that only has to be bought once. He also doesn't save much of his income. If he has extra, he spends it on nights out or dates with his girlfriend. Bob got an apartment with said girlfriend. They make each other very happy, and I think emotionally they're good for each other. But girlfriend is bad with money too. She spends more than she makes, and her job pays project by project, not a yearly salary. She's in the music and theater scene, so her income is very unstable. I got a call from Bob last week. Bob: "Hey, is there any way you can get me $200 by the end of tomorrow?" Me: No. What's going on?" Bob: "I gotta pay rent. Can you help me out?" Me: "I can't do 200. I could do 50. "Really? That's it?" Me: "Yeah, I've got my own crap to pay for too. My budget's tight." "Dude, I know you have a savings account." Me: "Yeah, for when my car breaks down or I need to go to the doctor. It's an emergency account." Bob: "This is an emergency. If I can't pay the rent, girlfriend and I will have to move in with her mom. This crap going on right now has us making way less money." Me: "Do you want the $50 or not? That's all I can do." Bob hangs up the phone. I assumed he was being dramatic. Maybe he didn't want to tell his girlfriend she'd have to return the pair of fancy shoes she just bought or something. I know they both have credit cards, so they could put the charge on that until the next paycheck. I got this text this morning. "You're really lucky, you know that? The apartment just waived the late fee and all that, but it can't happen again or we get evicted. Hope you have a room ready for us. If we don't make it next month, we're moving in with you. Girlfriend hopes you have a closet big enough for all her stuff." I told him to buzz off and I blocked him. Bob is not my friend anymore. Am I the jerk for moving out when my parents had another kid? I'm 22, female, and my parents had a late-in-life daughter last year. I have 3 other siblings besides, a brother who's 27, sister who's 24, and brother who's 14. I had been living rent-free with my parents up until last year in order to save money while I completed my undergraduate degree, which my parents paid for. They also told me they would let me live with them through grad school even though they wouldn't pay for it. My parents are financially well off, and my mom has always been a stay-at-home mother. Last year, when my mom found out she was pregnant, they told me they expected me to step up and help out with the baby and take on more housework. I already did a good chunk of the housework prior to this. My parents have done a lot for me, genuinely. They were pretty good parents and are good people. I just really did not want to get roped into a role as caregiver or even be shoved into the big sister role again. So I moved out maybe a month later, and this is verbatim what I said to them when I moved out. I appreciate everything you guys have done for me, but I feel that you're asking too much. I can't live with you and be subject to your rules indefinitely. At some point, I have to move out and live my own life. So anyway, I moved out and got a place with my fiance. My parents were very upset with me, and we haven't spoken much at all since I moved out. I've been sending a bi-monthly check to pay back the money they spent on my tuition since I've always felt a little guilty letting them pay for it, even before I moved out. I'm honestly okay with this new situation since my parents have always been a little overbearing, but my older sister recently told me that I'm selfish and ungrateful and I should apologize to my parents and help them with childcare, etc. I am not going to do that, and I'm not entirely convinced I did anything wrong. Am I the jerk? Edit. For people asking if my siblings are helping, my older brother, who's 27, lives with them, but because of mental health issues, depression I think, they have never expected anything of him. My younger brother was the baby for 14 years and is honestly pretty spoiled, so I know he's not doing anything. My sister isn't living with them, but she is probably helping out if they need anything. Their anger is more based on principle rather than actually needing help, since they are very financially well off. Edit 2. A lot of people are asking if my parents paid for my siblings' educations, and the answer is no. My older brother and sister both got full scholarships to college, although my brother didn't graduate due to mental health issues. I went to an expensive private university with only a partial scholarship, and my mother was vocally against this, as she wanted me to go to a state school since I didn't get any full rides. They would never ask me to pay them back, but my mother in particular has always made me feel a bit guilty for spending so much money. I'm not sure if she was intentionally guilt-tripping. Edit 3. Sorry for the confusion on the timeline. The baby is already born, but I did move out before she was born, and I got engaged after I moved out. Edit 4. I said in a comment that I wouldn't say where my parents immigrated from, but there's no chance they'll see this anyway. It's Mexico, if that gives any context. Well, who do you agree with? OP or her parents? Please let us know. Entitled Mom treats my baby like a doll. My aunt, Entitled Mom, is carrying the child of a man who already has 2 daughters from a previous marriage. P is 12 and D is soon to be 6. The other day, my mother had a little get-together to celebrate my aunt's birthday. Me and my 4-month-old baby were there, along with my aunt, her boyfriend, and his 2 daughters. My mother keeps all toys, especially since my youngest brother is 8. So there are many toys ranging from toddler to older. All are kept in my brother's room where I am currently staying, as he is spending the week at his dad's, and we all thought it would be convenient for the baby that I take his room while I'm visiting. The baby was asleep in his crib when Dee, familiar with the house, immediately throws herself in the room to play with the toys. So I pull her out, tell her a baby is sleeping in there, and to let it sleep. There are toys in a toy box in the corridor, and she can play with those for the moment. She still manages to slip in the room while we're all speaking and starts loudly playing in the room that of course wakes up my son. My aunt's reply, "She's 6. You couldn't exactly expect her to talk with us." I didn't. She had toys. But once the baby is awake, the interest shifts and the girl sticks to me repeating, "Wow, he looks like a doll." He's not. He's a baby, a real one. At first it was fun. My son seemed into it. P, the older one, was nice, respectful, giving him toys, but D was out of control and no one was saying a thing. It's not my job to educate others' kids, but she kept making big movements around the baby and screaming and tried to grab him a few times. I tried to be nice, say loud enough for her parents to react. They just look at me like, kids will be kids. I didn't feel safe anymore. Then Dee asked if she could hold him. Big no, huge no. I let my brother hold him while he's sitting down next to me because I trust him, but this little electric pill standing jumping everywhere, no way. And I said, no. She started whining, "Please, please," just like I was refusing her a toy. So my aunt said, "Let her hold him a bit. It'll be fine. She'll have a baby sister soon anyway." I insisted. It's still no. I explained she was too young and he's heavy and I don't feel safe. So she started getting mad, saying I'm too uptight. D should be able to hold my baby.
She'll sit down so you feel safer.
So D sat down right next to me and tried grabbing my son. I honestly almost shoved her against the wall. My baby was annoyed at this point. Faces he doesn't know everywhere. Loud voices, someone trying to grab him, so I just got up and left the room. I could hear her complain to my mom about how I'm too serious and paranoid. My mom didn't say anything because she adores her sister, but she clearly felt relieved I refused. Entitled mom was always annoying, but she was on a whole new level that day. It's scary, people who think they have a say in what happens to your baby. Am I the jerk for refusing to adopt my sister's kid? So I, 25 male, have a much older half-sister, Lisa, who is 48 from my deceased father's first marriage. As you can imagine, my father was substantially older than me himself, and if he was alive, he would be 71. Anyway, my mom, 51, always included Lisa, despite the fact there's only 3 years between them. They developed a bond and a friendship and greatly supported each other when my dad passed. Lisa always wanted kids, but for whatever reason, it never happened. There were times when I was younger that she acted like a surrogate mom to me. It got weird at points, and my mom and dad had to remind her she was my sister, not my mom. It hurt her, but she did back off and we developed a close relationship. Through the years, Lisa did try to have kids, but she never had any luck dating-wise. She attempted the donor route and that failed. She even tried adoption and it just never seemed to work out. My heart really went out for her, and when she hit her 40s, it appeared she accepted it wasn't meant to be. A few months ago, Lisa was having dinner with my mom and I and seemed over the moon about something. We thought she had finally had some luck dating someone. She said she had been involved with someone casually, but the announcement was that she was pregnant. She said it was a miracle at her age, as she was close to starting menopause, and I saw how happy she was and wished her well. She then revealed the dad wasn't interested but seemed unfazed by it. Here's what the problems are. Lisa is now 6 months pregnant and in a different situation than she was in her early pregnancy. She no longer has a job as her company went bankrupt due to what's going on. She received a small settlement payment but wasted all of the money on a new car. She then couldn't afford her rent and got kicked out. She's now living in my mom's spare room rent-free whilst my mom buys her essential supplies. Lisa receives unemployment benefits but keeps blowing the money and hasn't thought about the baby. Lisa came to me in tears with the realization she can't pay for the baby. She revealed she wanted my mom to pay and she flat out refused. I told Lisa it's not my job to pay for a kid that isn't related to her. Lisa then asked for help. She wants me to, upon the baby's birth, enter an open adoption. She said it means on paper I'd be the parent, but that she could still see the child and I'd be responsible for the kid in all aspects, especially financially. She basically wants to be a parent without any of the responsibility. I said heck no, I do not want to be responsible for a kid, and I said to her it's not my fault she got pregnant and her life circumstances changed and she keeps wasting money. I said if she really can't afford the baby, the best thing she could do is to give it to people who both can look after it and actually want it. She retaliated and said I'm a jerk for accusing her of not being able to be a mom. She basically says me and my mom are forcing her to give up her kid, but we're just trying to make her face up to reality. Well, what do you think? Should OP adopt Lisa's baby or not? Please let us know.
Lisa gives my entitlement a run for its money.
I can't be part of the family until I live by your rules? I'll make my own rules. 6 years ago, I decided to rip all the carpet out of my house and tile the entire house. It took a bit of planning and effort, but I was able to do all the work myself, with assistance from a few friends and my mom. At the end of the process, Mom and I had an argument that ended with her gaslighting me and me kicking her out of my house. She decided the best course of action was to complain to the entire family about what a horrible kid I was. Keep in mind, I was 26 at the time and owned my home, and how I was disrespectful, I was, and ungrateful, I was not, and I paid her in secondhand clothing. She borrowed my good dress, held it hostage, and I never got it back. My grandpa called me and told me that I wasn't welcome at any family functions until I apologized and I got rid of all my cats.
2 is an acceptable number of cats,
he tells me. I looked at my little family of 8 beautiful, happy little cats. Cue malicious compliance. That's fine, I said. I'll see you when I see you. I didn't turn up for Christmas. They assumed I went to visit my dad's side of the family. I didn't turn up for Mother's Day, Easter, birthdays, Father's Day. Another Christmas passed. I rescued another kitten. My family grew. My extended family were very confused by my absence. After 3 full years, my aunt finally decided to come and visit me to find out my side of the story. I explained my side, how I had been upset and said things I shouldn't, how Mom lied, and how Grandpa had told me I couldn't be part of the family until I had a reasonable number of cats. Bless her, she tried to sort it out, but Grandpa stood firm and so did I. Eventually, after almost 5 years, he was forced to accept that the cats weren't going anywhere, and now I'm allowed to attend family gatherings again. I think it had something to do with my aunt falling in love with and adopting third cat, meaning his rule would have also applied to his daughter. Don't mess with a crazy cat lady. She's crazy. Speaking of cats, do you have any cats? And if so, how many? Please let us know. I have poodles. Does that count? Santa calls out entitled woman on her BS. Hi, I work in an aquarium, and during the month of December, Santa visits and swims around the tank and talks to kids. It's an awesome thing and something different than the normal stuff around here. This event happened a week before Christmas 2019. So when Santa comes to the aquarium to swim with the sharks, he brings his elves with him to help talk to the kids. I was one of these elves this year, my first year and maybe only year because of this single woman. So we were doing our normal thing, and I was on the mic talking to kids and translating kid speak for Santa to hear. Keep in mind, he's in the tank, and we use special microphones and earpieces so everyone can communicate, and it's projected in the room. In between kids, my manager comes up and explains that there's a boy who's mute and just wants a picture. I'm like, yeah, sure, anything. I was honestly just happy to be there and making $1 more than my normal pay. Yeet. So we get to the boy. He's like 9 and just stared as I directed him and his mom to Scuba Santa. Mom takes the mic and talks to Santa. Mom.
Hi, Santa. This is Boy. He doesn't say much, so is it okay if we just get a picture?
Santa. Of course. And then he poses for the picture. I'm standing off to the side, out of the way of the picture, checking the time, as we had to get Santa a break. Air tanks only hold so much air. As I'm getting ready to call the dive team to get the new tank ready, there's a pop in my earpiece. I look up to the microphone, and Boy is holding it. Mom steps back towards me, and we all just watch. At this point, there's a small line forming, but we weren't worried about it. This was going to be the last kid before the 5-minute break. Boy. Santa, hi. For Christmas, I want a truck. The entire room goes silent, and Mom starts crying before looking and explaining that he hasn't spoke in over 6 months. So I let him ramble to Santa for a bit. Most is lost because it was rambling, but Boy was loving it, and no one in line seemed to mind. This really was a Christmas miracle of some sorts. Enter the entitled woman. She was in her 30s with her friends wanting a picture with Santa. Whatever, I didn't care. Boy finishes this babble and went to say goodbye. This woman yells over the crowd.
If he isn't going to say real...
Oh, you're wrong for that.
If he isn't going to say real words, get him off the mic.
My other elf friend was going to confront her as I was mic'd in, and whatever I would say would have been everywhere. But before they could get to her, Santa's voice comes over the speakers. Now, fun fact about this particular Santa is that he was a no-nonsense kind of guy in the first place, and in this instant, he became my best friend. Santa. Why don't you shut your pie hole? Now, because he heard this, it meant she had said it loud enough for my mic to pick it up and project it across the room. She was so red, but stayed in line, and Santa finishes with the boy. And I start my signal to let Santa know that he needs to go up for a new tank. Me. Santa, Mrs. Claus has some new cookies she wants you to try. Now folks, Santa will be back after a short milk and cookie break. Normally people agree and it's no big deal. We play games with the kids, sing a couple of songs, and before you know it, Santa is back. But today, this woman was not having it. Entitled woman.
Oh, come on. You have a whole line here, and he's just leaving.
Me. He'll be right back, I promise. And then I go into a song. This woman threw a fit, screaming and making a real scene. And I had left my mic on, but while the song was playing, it wasn't projecting her, but Santa could still hear her screaming. Eventually he came back and finally got to her in line. I reluctantly let her go up, and I step out of the way for a picture after she told me that if I was anywhere near the picture, she would have my head. I had security on standby, and they were ready to walk her out, because I don't want that crazy crap in my aquarium. And the best thing ever happened. Santa. Now hold on here. Are you the woman that yelled at the boy? Silence, like no one moved. And threw a fit when I had to go try Mrs. Claus' new cookie recipe? She just sat there, staring at him. I'll have you know that makes you #1 on my naughty list. We need to be compassionate and nice to others. My elves here are just doing what I have instructed them to do, and you are yelling at them. That's not in the spirit of the holidays. You need to apologize to everyone you have been mean to, and then go to the end of the line and wait again. Until that is done, I am not taking a picture with a naughty person." I was hyped. The woman was a jerk. She ended up storming away screaming for a manager. I believe she found one, but was escorted out with no picture. Boy got to meet Santa out of the tank and got a super special picture with him and all of his elves. He's a regular at the aquarium and likes to show us new words he's learned. It's amazing, and the diver is my favorite dude forever and always. Couldn't be any more obvious. I had received my paycheck this Thursday, and since my father was out of town for the week for work, I decided to help him out a bit more and buy his part of the groceries for the week along with my own. We usually go grocery shopping together on the weekends, but we each buy our own things since we eat different foods. Me saving up my money by getting basic ready-to-eat food like ramen noodles, potatoes, bread, eggs, stuff I know I can last a week with $10 or so, while he spends a bit more for meat, vegetables, certain ingredients, etc. Since he'd be spending a bit more money on gas for the trip back home this Sunday, I figured he probably wouldn't have too much to spend for his groceries once he got back. So I wrote down a list on my phone of the things he usually gets when we shop. Luckily, he always buys pretty much the same stuff every week, so I know what to get. Fast forward to today, Friday morning. I get up pretty early to cash my check and head to the store near my house before the lines get pretty long, as it would get colder later during the day when I'd have to return home. I make it to the store, and it seems like it's about to start filling up. So I grab a cart and start making my way through the aisles and get what we need. I fill my cart pretty quick with what I need, walking along, picking things off the shelf when I turn to the next aisle and see a woman with her cart parked sideways, blocking the area off as she looks up at an employee on a ladder reaching things off a high shelf, presumably for her. She's huffing and looking around impatiently, seemingly annoyed. I figure, poor guy, having to deal with entitled stuck-up Karen, which was odd since she didn't look like a Karen. I turned my cart to go to the next aisle, hoping she wouldn't be blocking off the area once I returned. But because my cart was getting full, it was quite heavy, and I slowly reversed and turned around. Unfortunately, I wasn't fast enough to leave and might have either made eye contact, she read my mind and noticed I called her Karen, or was annoyed that I sympathized with the employee and not her, because he was just an employee while she needed him to hurry up because she needed to pick up Jeffrey from soccer practice. Anyway, she noticed me and my turning my cart around as she turned and began speed walking towards me. At first, I didn't think anything of it. She probably saw something on a lower shelf she needed and went to pick it out. It was only when I was halfway in the next aisle when I heard her footsteps jog up next to me and grabbing my cart, actually calling out in a quite polite tone, "Excuse me." I was surprised at first, wondering why she'd go out of her way to stop a complete stranger in a polite manner, especially from seeing her from afar looking peeved and annoyed at an employee mere seconds ago. I quickly stopped my cart before I accidentally hit her or run over her foot, as after grabbing my cart, she stood in front of it. I thought maybe it's an emergency, but again, why go up to a stranger when the store associate was right there? Either way, I'm always polite to everyone I meet, and thus the conversation begins. Me, caught off guard. "Oh, yes? What's wrong? Can I help you?" Karen, still sounding polite. "Yes, I need your help." Me, "What is it?" "Come with me," as she begins to walk away. Me, "Okay." I start slowly turning my cart again to follow her. No, leave the cart there." Me, confused, but still thinking she may need actual help with something. Leave my cart to the side so I don't block the aisle and follow her. Oh, okay. Karen leads me to the previous aisle she was blocking, and her tone of voice changes. "Go get another ladder and help out your fellow associate here. He's having trouble taking items off the shelf quickly, and I want to get to the checkout line before it gets too long. You can finish stocking things later." Me, letting out a small chuckle. "Oh, sorry. I don't actually work here. I'm actually doing my own shopping." Karen, "Oh, please. I'm sure you can spare a bit of your time helping me out. Just get a ladder and help me with the things I need off those high shelves. Stocking everything doesn't take so long. I'm sure you've been here all morning putting things away anyway." Me, "I can't help you with that. Sorry, I don't work here, like I said. I'm actually just a customer, just like you. Maybe you can find an actual employee, or I can walk around shopping, and if I see someone, I can tell them someone needs assistance in your aisle.
Karen, look, I really don't have time for this. Either get another ladder or leave if you don't want to help.
The actual employee that was up on the ladder must have finally looked down, as I'm sure he was still picking her items or moving some stuff around, and pointed out to Karen. Excuse me, ma'am. He's not an employee. Karen looked up at him, then back at me, and finally noticed that I, in fact, wasn't an employee. The employee uniform at this store is a blue collar shirt with black dress pants and black dress shoes. I was wearing black jeans with a tear in the knee, white sneakers, a black t-shirt with a tuxedo design, and a gray hoodie and a beanie. I understand me walking around quickly with a cart full of stuff may look like I'm a stalker trying to work quietly, but as for the uniform, I have no idea. Karen, looking a bit embarrassed.
Oh, sorry.
Me. No, it's okay. It's all right. I make my way back to my cart and proceed to finish up my list and head to checkout, pay, and head on home. It was nice in a way to see a Karen quickly turn from snobby and stuck up to genuinely apologetic for making a mistake and owning up to it. Although rare, not the first time I've seen a Karen, but definitely my first interaction with one.
Karen demands to use my mobile Wi-Fi.
I read a recent post on here that reminded me of an instance with an entitled mother last summer. Was on annual leave. During the summer holidays, we took the kids out to the countryside. It was a beautiful day and decided to stop and have a few drinks and lunch in a pub. Now, while my daughter, 17, is very sociable and quite happy to sit in a pub garden enjoying the sunshine, my son doesn't. He actively avoids social situations, even with family, and hates to have his routine interrupted. However, we have found as long as he has access to his games through his phone or tablet, he will relatively be happy as he can zone out. While me, my wife, and daughter sit at a picnic-type pub table, my son plonks himself on a bench nearby and proceeds to play his games. We had been sat in the pub garden for an hour or so when entitled mom and another woman come into the garden with 3 kids and sit themselves in the shade next to the pub. No biggie, as we are on the top, sunny end of the garden. After about 20 minutes, entitled mom approaches my son and demands to know, not asks, if he is playing online, as her son cannot access the pub Wi-Fi. The signal is poor in the garden area. He nervously says yes and holds up the mobile Wi-Fi device he is using. The following conversation ensues. Entitled mom, "What's that?" I respond as my son is now showing signs of elevated anxiety. Me, "It's a mobile Wi-Fi device so he can play his games." Entitled mom, "How do I connect to it? My son needs to play his games." Me, "I'm afraid you can't. There's limited data on it and it's for my son's use."
But my son can't play his games.
Me, "I'm sorry, but that's not my problem."
But why should your son be able to play his games and not my son?
Daughter, "Because we brought a mobile device and you didn't. Gotta love my daughter." Me, "As I said, it's for my son's use and there's limited data on it." End of. She then stomps back to her table in a huff and thought nothing more of it. I have to point out that even if she had asked politely, I would have still said no, as the range on this thing is pretty poor, which meant her son would have had to sit near my son to use it. This would only raise my son's anxiety levels and he would not have been happy. About 10 minutes later, she shouts across the garden in a rather jubilant tone.
"Ha! I've managed to connect to your device."
Me, "I doubt that, since you haven't got the password. It's one of those default passwords that comes with a device that looks like you've just punched a keyboard."
"I don't need it. I have put my own in."
I'm like, whatever. There was no way she was connected to it. So we carry on chatting for another hour before getting up to leave. As we pass our table, she demands to know,
"Why is your service provider charging me for data?"
Me, "They're not. You were never connected to my device."
"Yes, they are. Look,"
and thrusts her phone in my face. Me, "I'm not with that provider, but I assume you are." I did not stay any longer and was not prepared to discuss the situation with her. Daughter stated, she's quite technical with these things, that she probably selected personal hotspot option thinking it was my device from her own device, but there was not enough data available, and when she entered her password, it was to purchase additional data. Not a mega end to the tale, and it's probably not as entertaining as some I've read on here, but thanks for reading. Would you let Karen use your Wi-Fi or not? Please let us know.
"You better."
Am I the jerk for refusing to watch my grandchildren overnight twice a week? I have 3 kids, a son who's 30, a daughter who's 28, and a daughter who's 20. My son has 3 kids, my oldest daughter has 3 also, and my youngest has 1. When my oldest grandchild turned 1, I'd occasionally have him overnight to give my son and daughter-in-law a break. Then as more came along, I'd watch them too. But now I feel it's at a point I can't cope with watching 7 kids all in one night, like my kids have wanted me to do. So I've been watching them in groups of 2 to 4 once a week or so. I don't want to sound like I don't care about my grandkids, but I had my oldest kid at 14. My parents refused to help raise my kids apart from paying for the basics until I turned 16, which was obviously their choice. So from a young age, I've worked full-time while raising kids. I've told my kids on several occasions that I don't mind helping out now and then with overnight visits, but at the same time, I want to go traveling, etc. now that I have some time to myself and also finally work on my career. I always take my grandkids, my kids, and their partners out once a week for a big family dinner, and I see my grandkids several times a week between that. Today, my 3 kids came over together and told me they'd been talking and they felt I'm not pulling my weight when it comes to helping with my grandkids. They've asked that I watch all the kids every Friday and Saturday night so they can get some time to themselves and their partners. I told them no. Watching all 7 kids is exhausting for 2 days in a row every week as they're so excited to see each other, and it's also lots of work. As a compromise, I said I'd watch either all 7 one night every second weekend or continue as things are, watching them once a week in smaller groups. They're not happy at this at all. They said as the grandma, I should be expected to help out so things aren't so stressful for them as parents. I already help out financially by paying for each grandkid to go to 2 after-school activities a week. I understand my kids are probably stressed from dealing with the kids all day, every day through lockdown, and I'm happy to make up for that time by watching them a bit more often for a few months. But am I such a horrible person for not wanting to give up my entire weekend on a weekly basis? They've left me to think it over, but I've told them I won't change my mind. I'll also add that they've all admitted they aren't done having more kids, with my son saying they're currently trying for a 4th. So I don't know what they expect me to do as numbers increase. Edit. Wow, this blew up overnight. Thank you so much for the awards that people have given me. I've sent the link to this to my kids for them to read, and I haven't heard back yet. I also told them in a group chat that going forward, I think they should watch each other's kids on a rotation, and I will help out once a month or so. There's so many comments that I don't know if I'll be able to make it through them all, but I'll try my best. Well, what do you think? Do you agree with OP or with her kids? Please let us know. Her kids sound almost as entitled as I am. Love it. Manager bullies me for several months until I finally quit. I made sure to get him fired. This happened around 2016. I had, at the time, 25 to 26 male, been without a job for a while, looking for a better paying job than I had before, and I found one at a camera security company that was looking to hire someone for the service desk. I went for an interview and got a call back later that day. If I wanted the job, it was mine. Now, my new manager was an ex-military, specifically ex-army, not American, just pointing that out. He really didn't like having people disagree with or going against him, a thing I was very unaware of when I took the job. For 2 to 3 months, everything was going well. The manager was cordial and seemed to really enjoy having me there. I worked my butt off every day as the software we were working with was unknown to me. So I studied a lot and even went overseas to another country to follow a course and succeeded on my exams. However, after that period, my grandpa, who was like a second father to me, suddenly was hospitalized after a brain bleed. He was found in the shower. He had collapsed after he pressed his panic button. This all happened on a Wednesday. The family came together in the hospital several times to show support and see Grandpa. However, on Friday afternoon, 3 p.m., I was called up by my father, my grandpa's son, while I was at work, and he explained to me that Grandpa unfortunately had passed away. I was in tears on the phone and in utter shock. It took me a while to calm down. I went to my manager and explained what just happened and that I'm going home to be with my family. However, that day there was an event. The company was doing a charity event, and this charity was going to be public news. They already announced the amount of people participating, and it would look bad if they were a person down. It was basically just for good PR. So he refused to let me go. I told him that by law, he cannot deny me, as my contract states that I can take a day away for something like this, and that I was leaving now. This was the turning point. He went from a nice manager to a manager from heck. Suddenly, everything I did was wrong. I was told he couldn't believe I was in this line of work for 6 years and be this bad at my job. He yelled at me and ridiculed me in front of my colleagues and even clients. This all continued for several months and severely began to impact my mental health. I had a talk with my parents and my fiance, at the time still my girlfriend. I'd asked her to marry me in December of 2016, and they basically told me that this was not okay, that I didn't have to take this, and that I should give them my 2 weeks notice. I agreed. The following day, I went to HR and explained why I was leaving the company and that I couldn't stand the idea of working even a single day more with that excuse of a human being. HR showed interest in my well-being and even more importantly in what I was claiming about my manager. They had received more complaints about him, but nobody had proof of his wrongdoings. So they asked me if I had proof. I told them I'd be looking for a new job, but I'd gladly fit in the time to collect all I could. For the next 2 weeks, I collected everything. Memos, emails, voice recordings. When on the phone, the calls are automatically recorded, and this jerk was stupid enough to talk to me this way while we were on the phone. Lucky me. Also lucky was that my colleagues at the desk had my back this entire time. They had been trying to cheer me up, said I was doing fine work, and that they also didn't understand this man's behavior. So when I came by and asked if they'd mind signing a document that everything I stated in the paperwork was true, they gladly did. I had one last talk with HR and him at the same time the last day I was there. Before he even walked in, I told the HR person who was mediating, he's going to walk in, say what he wants to say, and I'll be quiet and listen. When he's done, I'll explain my side, and he's going to interrupt me, tell you I'm lying, and talk about completely non-related subject matter to drag the conversation in another direction. She looked surprised at my comment, but had no time to respond as Mr. Army Man walked in and began his spiel. Exactly as I stated, he'd blurt his side out, and once I tried to talk, he'd consistently interrupt me and tried to pick fights. Eventually, I got up, told HR, I told you so, here's the documents you've been asking for. I placed a filled folder with several dozens of emails, plenty of memos, and a USB containing 3 phone conversations and even video footage of him yelling at me. In both voice and video recordings, you could easily hear him yelling at me. I gave the manager a big bright smile, who was smirking victoriously, and said to him, I don't think you'll be smirking like that for long. Enjoy your little victory. His smirk disappeared into a confused scowl, but I slammed the door on him before he could respond and left the building, feeling like a huge, and I mean humongous-sized, planet-sized amount of stress fall off my shoulders. Within a month, I was back to my old self. 2 months later, I was working at a new job, and out of curiosity, I checked my ex-manager's LinkedIn. Unemployed. I called one of my old colleagues to ask what exactly went down. My proof opened Pandora's box. He was being disrespectful to the female staff, insulted the older staff, and on multiple occasions was less than cordial with our extended hires. None of these complaints were acted upon because it was his word against theirs, and there was no proof. However, me providing overwhelming proof of his gross behavior towards me made all of the complaints now to be taken as fact. He was promptly fired less than a month after I left, and they refused to provide him with any form of reference. In a field like his, references mean a lot, so not getting one from a company you've worked at for nearly a year is a huge red flag. It's now 2020, 4 years passed, and according to LinkedIn, he's still not working in his field. I'll gladly admit that I felt rather wickedly satisfied, and still do whenever I happen to think about it. Have you ever had a manager treat you bad? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know. All the time, and I've spoken to a lot of managers. Clean up on aisle 4? Better make that 2 cleanups. I was reminded of this one while picking up my online grocery order. The store added a little freebie bag of back-to-school lunch goodies, including a packet of peanut butter, or as I call this stuff, distilled death. Many years ago, I worked for a big box retailer that included a grocery section as a general grunt worker, stock boy, cashier, parking lot attendant, whatever they needed at the time. I was scheduled either on the floor or in the parking lot. It's been a very long while, so don't remember which. I had just gotten clocked in and checked out one of the walkie-talkies the non-cashiers used to coordinate with. I still suck with names, so I'll keep it simple. We've got me, and we've got boss. Me. Hey boss, just clocked in. Where do you need me? Boss. Oh, hey, good timing. I need you to bring a mop and a bucket over to aisle 4. Somebody dropped and broke a jar of peanut butter. Me. I'm deathly allergic to peanut butter, boss. Is there any way you can get someone else on that? Boss, annoyed. Look, we've got a lot to get done today. I don't have time for this. Either get it cleaned up or go home. Me. Okay, boss. I want it noted I'm doing this under protest. One of the other managers on the floor acknowledged that for me. So, off I go to one of the cleanup stations to fill up the mop bucket to take over. I can already smell the peanut butter from 5 aisles away, and my gag reflex is informing me that yes, this is in fact a very bad idea. Boss: Alexander, where are you? Me: on the way, boss. To set the scene, he's on the far end of the aisle, making sure nobody steps in the peanut butter or broken glass. There is, fortunately, nobody else in the aisle. I say fortunately because I didn't want anybody else in the line of fire for what was about to happen, and I was maybe 30 feet away from the site of the accident when it did. I threw up. About half of it went into the fresh bucket of mop water. Most of the rest went all over the floor, but the bottom shelf took some splash damage. I wound up dropping to my hands and knees before I was done, trying to back out of the aisle far enough to get away from the smell of distilled death and what used to be leftover pizza. I should point out that it was early in the day. There was no music at the store, and everything was generally quiet. I was not quiet, not even slightly. The guy who always opened the toy department halfway across the store got on the walkie-talkie to ask if everything was all right. Boss was staring at me in a mix of disgust and abject horror. I was still on the floor when I looked up at him and wiped my face off on the sleeve of the company-issued polo. I stood up, leaned against a shelf, and reached for my walkie-talkie, looking right at Boss the whole time. Me: There are 2 cleanups on aisle 4. I'm going home. I turned off my walkie-talkie and went to go clock back out. I know Boss tried to yell something at me down the aisle when I turned to leave the aisle, but I was lightheaded and dizzy and couldn't make out what he said. Didn't care, really. And he couldn't chase me down because company policy required that somebody stay at the accident to keep customers from doing something that could incur a lawsuit. There was no fallout from the incident on my side of things, but Boss spent the rest of my time working there, another 5 or 6 months, avoiding me unless there was absolutely no getting around it. From what I was told later, the manager who had acknowledged my protest and half the sales floor all backed me up when the store manager showed up and asked where I was. I even told the store manager my next day back that I had followed Boss's orders. I hadn't cleaned up the mess in aisle 4 as demanded, so I went home. Do you have anything you're allergic to? If so, what is it? Please let us know.
I'm allergic to accountability.
Am I the jerk for buying my rental home and kicking out my obnoxious roommates? Background: my original roommate and I have a mutual friend who is our landlord. I moved in because he was struggling to pay rent, which impacted my best friend. He missed an entire month of rent, and my friend lowered his rent at his own expense to help him. I came in to rent a room to help out. To be clear, I paid more rent than my roommate knew because my landlord friend couldn't really afford the charity decrease. I can't tell the roommate because he would feel entitled to pay even less. I accepted this, but then the roommate got a girlfriend, and 2 months into the relationship, he moves her and her 2 poorly behaved kids in. This is a 4-bedroom, 1-bathroom place. The kids scream and throw tantrums, and the mother is exceptionally demanding both to me, her boyfriend, and our landlord. She's costing money by finding every little thing under the sun to be fixed or replaced. The kitchen counters need to be replaced, etc. She takes up almost all of the common spaces. She weaponizes her anxiety to get her way. To top it off, they're living all together at the same price that my roommate was paying when he was single. I did the math. Utilities included, they pay $200 per person, and I pay $400. Yet they dominate the place and dictate everything. Now, here's where I'm asking if I'd be the jerk. My friend is considering selling the place to me as a lease to own. Would I be the jerk if I bought the place and gave them 30 to 60 days notice to get out? To clarify, they don't have a lease and pay month to month. I paid in advance through next year. Update: upon listening to y'all, I have decided to give my roommates a talk and ask to pay an equal rent/utilities per person before taking more drastic measures. I would also say my roommate makes $1,000 a week at his job, though he has debt he got himself into. Girlfriend just got her master's degree. I think asking for a rent equalization is morally right. If they refuse, I won't feel bad about Operation Buy and Buy. Also, I care about this place a lot because I have invested a lot in my garden, maybe 100+ hours. Entitled Mom tells me to eat my food and not to text my boyfriend. So 2 years ago, I was at a local shopping center with my mom and we were getting something to eat. But since the places were all so busy, the tables were full and there was barely anywhere to sit without having to sit with a bunch of strangers. Cast: we've got my mom, we've got Entitled Mom, we've got Quiet Kid, and we've got me. So cut to about 10 minutes later when we got our food, my mom and I had to go find a place to sit. But like I explained before, the place was full. But behold, there were 2 seats empty just opposite, you guessed it, Entitled Mom and her kid. My mom: is it okay if we sit here? Entitled Mom:
Yeah, we're almost done anyways.
My mom and I had sat down, and I went on my phone to answer my dad, who had texted me, entitled Mom.
Ugh, teenagers are always on their phones.
My mom, seeing that I'm texting my dad and probably didn't want to cause trouble. Yup, entitled Mom.
I hope my daughter doesn't grow up to be like this.
I ate some of my popcorn, chicken, and chips as she said this, since I got the hint that entitled Mom didn't want me on my phone. My mom. OP, I've forgotten your straw. I looked at my Maltesers Crush'em. If you've had one before, you know what I'm talking about. I didn't want to take off the lid and drink it that way since I preferred a straw, since it meant not accidentally getting the Crush'em on the table and causing more mess for the cleaners. So my mom got up and went to get me one. The counter with the straws wasn't too far and she was still in eyeshot, but this is where entitled Mom talks to me.
Ugh, can't you eat your dinner and not text your boyfriend? I'm sure you can go 5 minutes without sending a love text.
Me. I'm texting my dad, and I'll eat when I'm ready. Truth be told, I wasn't that hungry, so that's why I didn't eat much, but I had finished most of my food when she then turned her direction to her daughter, entitled Mom.
Are you almost done?
Quiet Kid just nodded. She didn't seem too happy, and I could tell why. Anyways, my mom came back just after entitled Mom and her kid left. I told her what had happened, and I drank my Crush'em. After that, I bought some Lego, and we went home. This was my first encounter with an entitled parent, but not my last. I have more stories to share, and I'll post the next one maybe tomorrow. Edit. Sure, it's not ideal to go on your phone during mealtimes, but my main family, parents, grandparents, and aunt, are quite okay with me going on my phone when eating, as they know I'm not going on it for long, and they know I'll eat my food anyways. Am I the jerk for naming my daughter the name I chose years ago? I had my daughter a week ago. I had chosen her name a long while ago because it had a very personal meaning to me. Before I was pregnant, my sister and I had been talking about what we'd like to name our kids, and I told her the girl name I really wanted to use. She complimented me on it, and then we didn't talk about it again. She gave birth to my niece 5 months ago, and guess what name she used? That's right, the name I had chosen so long ago. I didn't care, was a little annoyed by it, but I wasn't going to let it stop me from using the name. Now she's annoyed I used the name too. She told me it was weird that I would use it and that the cousins have the same first, middle, and last name. I told her I wasn't going to change the name I had wanted for a long time that had a deep meaning for me, just because she decided to use it after I told her the name. She said as the first one to have a baby, she got dibs. I told her to get over it, and it was a name anyone could use. Am I the jerk? I don't think she's the jerk, for your information. I think she's entitled to use the name, but she's kind of being a jerk when she knows how I felt about the name. Editing to add details I provided below so it doesn't keep getting asked. My husband took my name when we got married, and my sister is a single mom, hence the same name. We live 2 hours from each other. The first name was my best friend's name. She passed away when we were 14, and I always planned to name a daughter after her to honor her, so it is very special. The middle name holds important significance due to a trauma I suffered and the healing it brought in the situation. It's a weird story, I will admit, and I shared more detail in reply to someone, but I'm not in the mental state to write it out again. They're your rules. I was an English teacher in Moscow. At the beginning of the school year, I asked for a week of time off around a holiday so I could travel home. I got denied, so the week it came around, I was pleased that most of my classes had been canceled because the students had the same idea I had and were all going on vacation. I got an email from the administration stating that I was to cover classes for another teacher, who was taking vacation for the week I had asked for. So I was already a bit upset that they had approved him, but not me, especially since I'd asked for it like 5 months ago. Anyway, I accept the hand that was dealt and start preparing lessons. The day of the first class, I leave home a few hours early so that I had plenty of time to make sure I could find the place. It was at a location I'd never been, and that I had all the necessary equipment I needed to read the lessons. It was pretty easy to find, but when I rang the bell, there was no answer. I had some time, so I went off to get a snack. I came back to the school around 30 minutes early and rang the bell again. No answer. I tried calling the school's administrator. No answer. I tried calling the administrator who assigned the classes. No answer. For over an hour, I rang the doorbell and called multiple times to no avail. My contract stated that I had to wait 30 minutes for students to show up before I could leave. So at the 30-minute mark, I sent a text to all parties that read something along the lines of, "I was here on time. I waited a half hour after the scheduled time, but nobody answered the door. I'm going back home. It will take me 20 minutes to get to the metro. If you call me before I board, I will turn around and come back." When I got home, I got a call. "Where the heck are you?" "At home." "You have a class." I'm aware. I was there and nobody answered the door. I called and nobody answered. I also left a text. Texting is not an approved form of communication. Now, this was before I had a phone with a data plan, so text was the only way I could message someone. They tried docking my pay for this, but when I told the owner what had happened and showed him my call logs and the text I left, he made sure that didn't happen. Fast forward a few months. I'd been having a lot of issues with the administration, so I'd become an expert on the finer details of our contract. One of these details was that the administration couldn't assign a class with less than 72 hours notice. So when they called on Saturday to give me a class for Monday, I told them no. Again, they tried to dock my pay. The owner sided me and told me I was right. My favorite part, though, was receiving a text that said I was to teach a class on a given day. They made special mention of the 72-hour rule. I ignored the text. When the time for class came around, I got another call. Where the heck are you? At home. You have a class. No, I don't. I sent you a text. I have it saved. Texting is not an approved form of communication. How dare I mess up Karen's milkshake? Context. I live in a major city in my country, though out of the fray of tourist attractions. My boyfriend at the time, we were both around 15 when the story took place. We've been broken up for several years now. Worked in a high-end touristy neighborhood for a large ice cream chain, as pay tended to be better in this area. The people who frequent the shops there are either very wealthy or are tourists, though occasionally middle-class locals would venture in for a little fun. We had been dating for 6 months, apparently a very big deal to our freshman year of high school selves, so we decided to be a little fancy and go out in this area of town for a nice lunch and a walk down on the waterfront. We didn't dress up too crazy, but I was wearing a nicer outfit since it was a special occasion. He even gifted me a necklace, and it was a really lovely afternoon. Well, it was a really lovely afternoon. We decided to stop into the ice cream shop where we worked to say hi to his coworker friend. Only one person was working, despite it being a pretty busy area, as it was a weekday. We chat with her for a bit. She was a woman in her mid-30s, and she gives us each a free ice cream cone. It was nice, and I was very dazzled by his work perks. We say goodbye, and my boyfriend and I decide to shop around after finishing our ice cream, admiring all the fancy clothes we would buy if we had the funds. We're trying on some goofy clothes and taking funny photos, typical high school fun, when he gets a phone call. It's his coworker, and she says we have to come back right away. He's trying to tell her he has the day off and we're out on a date, but she insists it's an emergency and we're the only people nearby. So we go back to the ice cream shop. It actually was an emergency. The freezer in the back that held all of their stock, nearly $10,000 worth of ice cream in giant tubs, this place was a huge operation, had broken and the ice cream was beginning to melt. She had to go to the regional warehouse to get a company freezer van to salvage what they could, as they were losing money by the second. The catch: she wanted us to work the store and business was starting to pick up. She found a company shirt for me to wear that was so big I was practically swimming in it, and decided that even though I had no understanding of how anything worked and had never even had a job before, it was perfectly okay for me to work the counter. And before you say, I was technically working there, I never got paid for the couple of hours I was working, and really was not qualified to be representing the brand. The location later shut down. There were a lot of subpar business practices happening there that contributed. So with two 15-year-olds in charge, the manager heads out and the people start to flow in. Again, I have zero training, and my boyfriend is stuck on the register, so I am scrambling trying to figure out which ice cream is which, as behind the counter there are no flavor labels. I just try to tell people I'm new, or just helping out for the day, and most people are pretty cool and accepting of this, and don't mind the couple of extra minutes it was taking for me to serve them. Keyword: most. Enter Karen. I later ended up working at a different luxury ice cream store later in my high school career and learned to spot the dreaded beast, but my sweet summer child, naive baby self had no clue. She looked very typical of someone who was a native in our area, very businessy and clean cut, well put together with a permanent scowl painted across her lips. She came up to me and seemed nice at first. She complimented the song that was playing and even did a little dance. This put me at ease. She seemed so cool. She ordered her milkshake, the first non-ice cream cone order of the day. As she was the only customer in the store at the moment, my boyfriend walks me through how to make it. I don't know why he didn't just make it and spare me the wrath, but oh well. We don't bother explaining I'm new or anything, since we figure she'll put two and two together with how he's explaining to me how to make it. It takes me a while to make it and find everything as I didn't work there, but eventually I finished the milkshake and it actually looked pretty good. I give it to her and she gets really weird. She walks towards the register, sipping slowly. My boyfriend rings her up and Karen stops drinking it.
I'm not paying for this.
Boyfriend, I'm sorry?
It's too thick. It's like she doesn't even know how to make a milkshake.
Well, to be fair, I didn't. Boyfriend, I'm sorry, ma'am. She is new and still learning.
Well, she's incompetent, and I'm not paying for this.
I could see my boyfriend getting frustrated, and I felt tears passing at the corner of his eye. He tells her she has already drank the beverage, so she has to pay. Begrudgingly, she obliges. She walks towards the door, hovers there, takes another sip, walks back to the register.
This is ridiculous. I want a refund.
Boyfriend, I'm sorry, I can't do that, but I can have her remake it.
Fine, but I don't want that girl making it.
My boyfriend, annoyed, makes her a new milkshake, the exact same way I had made mine. She seemed pleased with the one he made and left us with no tip, just a snide comment as she walked out.
You really should fire that girl, and I'm leaving you both a bad review.
We watch her walk out the window, drinking from both milkshakes. We decided to close the shop at that point and wait for the manager. I then got my nice clothes, hair, skin covered in chocolate ice cream melt as we helped her load up the freezer van to take the ice cream to the warehouse.
Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.